Chapter 853. People would eventually become soft-hearted. Although most of the time, being soft-hearted would not bring about any serious consequences, sometimes the consequences would be extremely terrible. For example, the situation Gahan was facing now. Gahan, who was standing on a high place and looking into the distance, could clearly see some large figures rapidly approaching him from the ruins of Shenyang City. These figures were all more than 5 meters tall. It was obvious that they were not normal humans. This also meant that the Wu people that Gahan had been worried about had finally caught up. Everyone, gather and hide in the forest on the west side. Hurry, Gahan said loudly to the sword-bearers who were surrounding old Chen's son's corpse and helping him dig a hole. The sword-bearers were stunned when they heard this. Then, they looked into the ruins of Shenyang City and immediately understood what had happened. They immediately followed Gahan's instructions and began to escape into the forest. Son, my precious son, old Chen turned a deaf ear to them. It was obvious that he was immersed in the grief of his son's death and could not care about what was happening in the outside world. Gu Xuanwu, knock that old man out and throw him into the forest. Protect the sword-bearers hiding inside. Gahan ordered Gu Xuanwu. Then, he prepared to face the Wu people alone. In fact, for Gahan, the best way was to escape. Gahan believed that with his body technique, he would definitely be able to shake off these damned Wu people. But what about the famed sword-rank sword-bearers? If Gahan and Gu Xuanwu ran away, the remaining 18 famed sword-rank sword-bearers would most likely die. This was something that Gahan could not accept no matter what. It was too difficult for humans to train a famed sword-rank sword-bearer. If they died in the hands of the Wu people without making any contributions, this was something that Gahan could not accept no matter what. Therefore, Gahan secretly made up his mind. Unless it was an enemy that was too strong to be defeated, Gahan would save as many sword-bearers as he could. He had to bring these sword-bearers to a safe place. No, go into the forest and let me deal with the Wu people. Unexpectedly, Gu Xianwu, who had always been obedient to Gahan, disobeyed Gahan for the first time and said, "Look at those Wu people carefully." Among the 5 groups, only the Wu people of the Changliang tribe are above 5 meters tall. The Wu people of the Changliang tribe are born to be good at hand-to-hand combat. They are very strong and difficult to deal with. Besides, each of these Wu people has a 1-meter-long tail, which means that they are all intermediate-level Wu people, and there are at least 10 of them. Just now, you already had a hard time dealing with 2 middle-level magi from the Zhurong clan. You can never rival these 10 middle-level Wu people from the Changliang clan, said Gu Xuanwu while pulling Gahan's hand. It's all right. I have the primal chaos to split open the heavens. I can handle a mere dozen intermediate magi. You're just a kid, so don't get involved in the battle. Just go and protect those sword-bearers, Gahan said firmly. Kid, Gu Xuanwu sneered and said, I look a bit older than you. Why do you call me a kid? Have you already admitted that I'm your daughter in your heart? So, you're treating me like a kid? Gahan was suddenly speechless by Gu Xuanwu's words. Yes, Gu Xuanwu indeed looked much older than Gahan. If Gahan hadn't already treated Gu Xuanwu as his own daughter, he wouldn't have called Gu Xuanwu a kid. Dad, your primal chaos heaven-splitting technique is indeed very powerful, but you didn't know that you clearly warned me in the sword manual you left behind. The power of the primal chaos to split open the heavens comes from the deepest part of one's soul. Although it looks like a sword move, it will consume one's soul. Therefore, this move can't be used continuously, or else it will greatly weaken one's soul. Actually, it won't be too troublesome for me to deal with these Wu people. Don't forget that I can still use my sword essence. I'm still a genuine famous sword-level sword-bearer. These Changliang tribe's Wu people are nothing to me, Gu Xuanwu said indifferently. If that's the case, then go. Gahan nodded and said, get rid of them as fast as possible. I'm afraid that behind these Changliang tribe's Wu people, there are even more Wu people rushing over. Gahan looked at Gu Xuanwu's figure as he charged towards the Changliang tribe's Wu people. This kid is calling me dad, right? Son, my precious son, why did you leave dad? How am I supposed to live without you? Meanwhile, Old Chen's sobbing voice reached Gohan's ears. Gohan was upset when he heard this. He walked behind Old Chen and struck his Fengqi acupoint with his hand, knocking the mentally and physically exhausted old man unconscious. Gohan then brought him to the small forest. All of you, hide yourselves well. Don't expose yourselves, and don't let the Wu people discover you. You're not allowed to look at the battlefield with your eyes. Otherwise, the Wu people with sharp senses will discover your whereabouts through your eyes. When that happens, you'll all die together. Gohan, who was also hiding in the forest, said to the sword-bearers. When the sword-bearers heard that their gazes might allow the Wu people to discover their location, they immediately lowered their heads obediently and didn't dare to look at the battle outside the forest. It was just that Gohan, who told others not to watch, was actually paying close attention to the situation on the battlefield. This was a lie that Gohan had lied to them. Although there were indeed some shamans who could sense the gazes of humans, those shamans were definitely not like the burly and strong warriors in front of them. Even if an infrared ray was shot at them, they wouldn't be able to detect it with their extremely thick nerves. The reason why Gohan told the other sword-bearers not to look at the battlefield was that Gu Xuanwu was fighting with the Qiangliang tribe's Wu people and had started a fight with the sword element. Gohan didn't want the other sword-bearers to find out that Gu Xuanwu could use the sword element. Therefore, he could only lie to them to not pay attention to the battle. Because of Gohan's order to finish the battle as soon as possible, Gu Xuanwu used all of his strength at the beginning of the battle without hiding anything. He fully exerted his chaos swordsmanship. Even though he was besieged by over 10 Qiangliang tribe's warriors, he still didn't seem to be in a disadvantageous position. He even launched fierce counterattacks from time to time. Soon, 2 or 3 Qiangliang tribe's warriors were killed by Gu Xuanwu. The moment the dead bodies of the Wu people touched the ground, they would turn into a pool of blood and merge with the ground. This meant that the blood essence in their bodies had returned to the blood essence of the 12 ancestors of sorcery through the veins of the earth. As long as the blood essence was nurtured for a year or two, these dead warriors of the Qiangliang tribe would be reborn. In less than 5 minutes, Gu Xuanwu will be able to kill these Wu people. Gohan thought to himself as he watched the battle. Originally, Gohan couldn't watch Gu Xuanwu's chaos swordsmanship. If Gohan had watched Gu Xuanwu's chaos swordsmanship, some of the sword moves that Gohan hadn't created would be left in Gohan's mind. This wasn't a good thing for Gohan. Instead, it was like a ditch that could restrict the flow of water, limiting Gohan's creation of chaos swordsmanship to this ditch. However, the situation was different now because Gohan had created chaos swordsmanship with his own strength. At this moment, Gohan realized that Gu Xuanwu hadn't learned the essence of chaos swordsmanship at all. He had only learned a little bit of it. However, this little bit could no longer affect him, who had already created chaos swordsmanship. It was just like how a ditch couldn't restrict the flow of the Yangtze River. What Gohan didn't know was that behind him, there was a pair of bright eyes that didn't listen to Gohan's order to close. Instead, they were watching the entire battlefield attentively. Her mouth was wide open and didn't close at all. Sir Quafu, our tribe's warriors are in a tough battle. 8 of them have already returned to the arms of Zhu Wu. I'm afraid the remaining 4 warriors won't be able to hold on for long. In a battlefield filled with battle cries, an old Wu people whose body was so thin that his bones could be seen was floating in the air. He was talking to a 20-meter-tall, giant Wu people. What? Our brave and invincible warriors have been defeated by a group of ordinary humans who haven't gone through the flag-planting ceremony. The sorcerer called Quafu said in a low voice. Every time he opened and closed his mouth, a hurricane-like storm would form. It was as if rain had fallen on half of the battlefield. According to the incomplete memories of the warriors' souls, they were defeated by a sword master who could use the sword element normally. The old man continued. This old man was the great sorcerer of the Wu people. In the Wu people's tribe, sorcerers were a very special existence. Other than being able to fly, sorcerers didn't have any other combat abilities. Even an ordinary person could kill a sorcerer with a sword. However, sorcerers were the most important characters in the Wu people's tribe. Only they could communicate with the souls of the dead warriors and read the remaining memories in their souls. The great sorcerers of the tribe were even more impressive. They could communicate with the suppressed 12 Zhu Wu and receive the orders of the 12 Zhu Wu. Even the great sorcerers of the 12 Zhu Wu's tribe didn't dare to disobey the orders of these great sorcerers. This was because these orders represented the will of the Zhu Wu. Chapter 854. This scrawny old man was the master magus of the Changliang tribe, and this guy named Quafu was the leader of the Changliang tribe, a senior magus whose power was even higher than Yuan Ko's. At present, he was the most powerful Wu people could have. There should be some sword bearers hiding in the Taiwei area, and then they defeated the warriors we sent there. Quafu's expression was very angry. Damn the people of Dijiang. Bloody Xianglu. I told them again and again to search the entire Taiwei area 3 times, but there are still some people hiding in there. What's worse is that Xingtian. He's arrogant and stubborn. I told him that we had to send the most elite warriors of the Zhurong clan to block those human reinforcements, but he insisted that 2 intermediate magi would be enough. Now look, over 10 brave warriors of our Changliang clan have been sacrificed because of him. Those monster *T, those bastards. Seeing his leader crazily cursing the leaders of the other tribes, this master magus wisely shut his mouth. This was how Wu people were. They couldn't keep anything to themselves. As long as they were unhappy, they would curse out loud. If they were even more unhappy, they might directly start a fight. Once, the Zhurong tribe and the Gong tribe fought so fiercely that only 1 senior magus and a few warriors of his tribe were left. The entire Zhurong tribe returned to Zhu Wu's spirit blood, and it took them 30 years to recover. Right, because Wu people hated spirit creatures the most, Wu people liked to use the word spirit creature when cursing others. Just now, they said monster *T and bastards, just like how human beings called dog *T and bastards. It was almost the same. Inform Xingtian and Xianglu about this. This is the monster *T they left, and they'll clean it themselves. We, the Changliang tribe, will not do anything about this. Let Dijiang tribe and Zhurong tribe send heaven magi to deal with those human beings. Quafu made the decision in anger. I don't think that's a good idea. The people of the Zhurong tribe and the Dijiang tribe have all been thrown into the frontline battlefield. If I ask them to split up the search for those humans now, I'm afraid that water from afar won't be able to quench the nearby fire. Those humans have long gone into hiding. The great wizard advised. Their troops have been sent to the front line, but aren't our soldiers on the front line as well? Moreover, we've lost far more warriors than those 2 tribes. I won't care about this kind of vexing thing anymore. Quafu's attitude was very firm. But what if the 2 tribes don't want to care? The Grand Wizard frowned. It doesn't matter if we don't care. Let a few dozen humans wander around outside. It's not a big deal anyway. All of their Zhou Tian Star Time banners have been moved to the Sun Star. As long as these humans can't get close to the Sun Star, they're just a bunch of trash. Once the Zhou Tian Star battle formation is broken, they will go and kill these ants. The Grand Wizard didn't say anything because he knew that what Quafu said actually made sense. Even if it was a group of famous sword-bearers, as long as they couldn't hold a flag-planting ceremony, they were just ordinary people. A few intermediate sorcerers would be able to get rid of these people. Otherwise, Quafu wouldn't have agreed to the Zhurong tribe, sending only 2 intermediate sorcerers to deal with these human reinforcements in the previous meeting. It was just that he didn't know why the Dijiang tribe had clearly searched 3 times, but there were still fishes that had escaped the net in the Taiwei region, causing this matter to fail at the last moment. If these humans decided to hide, even the sharp-hearing women of the mysterious underworld tribe would not be able to do anything. After all, the land within the Shanhai Pass was too big, and all the main forces of the Wu people were concentrated near the front line of the Sun Star. The number of Wu people in the other positions was pitifully small. It was simply impossible to use a carpet search method to find those few dozen damn humans. Now, the Grand Wizard hoped that these humans would hide well and hide until they conquered the Suzaka planet. Of course, If these humans recklessly wanted to get close to the Sun Star, the Grand Wizard would also be very happy because the densely packed warriors outside the Sun Star would teach these humans a lesson. That's right. Other than this star shuttle, what's the situation with the other 3-star shuttles? Quafu suddenly asked the Grand Wizard. It seemed like things were indeed, as Leslie Dracula had said. The Wu people didn't just tamper with the Taiwei-Sec star shuttle. Even the other 3-star shuttles were tampered with. The situation isn't too optimistic. Upon hearing Quafu's question, the Grand Wizard could only smile bitterly. We lost contact with the Shebi Corpse Tribe team that was preparing to control the Green Dragon Star shuttle after they set off. The entire team was beaten until even their souls dissipated. Only their blood essence escaped through the earth vein. We don't know what happened to them. Fortunately, the human who killed this team didn't seem to be able to contact the main force of the human race, so we didn't expose our plan. The other 3 teams of the Shebi Corpse Tribe successfully controlled the drivers of the other 3-star shuttles. There was news from the front line that the human forces on the Green Dragon Star suddenly increased significantly. The reinforcements of those humans must have arrived at the Green Dragon Star and held a flag planting ceremony. Jiufeng was so angry that she was cursing. Jiufeng was the Grand Wizard of the Hutu tribe. The Hutu tribe was the main force in charge of attacking the Green Dragon Star. It seemed that the sword-bearers led by Andreevich and Harry Chong-Ruo had successfully arrived at the Green Dragon Star. The human forces on the Green Dragon Star have increased. It seems like breaking through the defense of the Green Dragon Star has become an extravagant hope. Our biggest hope now is to break through the defense of Suzaku. What happened to the reinforcements? Are they dead? Quafu asked nervously. I don't know. The Grand Wizard waved his hand. The Shebi Corpse Tribe lost contact with their tribe after the star shuttles set off. However, their blood essence didn't return to Zhu Wu, so we don't know whether the Shebi Corpse Tribe is dead or not. However, we can be sure that the reinforcements of those humans haven't arrived yet. Otherwise, the remaining sword-bearers wouldn't have fought so hard. It is said that many sword-bearers have self-destructed to take us down with them. This is a method that humans will only use when they are in a desperate situation. Have the human sword-bearers started to self-destruct? When Quafu heard this news, his eyes narrowed into a smile. Based on his past experience with humans, once humans decided to self-destruct and fight the sorcerer tribe to the death, these humans would most likely enter a desperate situation where they would definitely die. The areas they were guarding would most likely be breached with their backs to the wall. What about the North Star? What about the sword-bearers who went to the North Star? Quafu asked with great concern. Because the North Star and the North Star had been breached, the sword-bearers stationed there were no longer burdens in the areas they guarded. They could go to other areas to provide support. Therefore, the human forces that were responsible for supporting the North Star would definitely go to Suzaku after the flag planting ceremony. This would add a lot of variables to the future, so Quafu was eager to know more about the North Star. The Grand Sorcerer was silent for a while. The memory of the Shebi corpse in charge of the Star Shuttle has been read. He was discovered by the sword-bearer in the Star Shuttle halfway. If he had not used all his strength to destroy the entire Star Shuttle at the last moment, causing it to crash, I'm afraid that the Star Shuttle would have flown to the Sun Star. Didn't you guys destroy the manual and AI functions of the Star Shuttle? Didn't you say that the Star Shuttle can only return to the North Star District according to the preset route? Why did the Shebi zombie destroy the entire Star Shuttle? Quafu asked in confusion. Because the Star Shuttle contains that bloodline. The wrinkles on the Grand Wizard's face were wrinkled, and his bones seemed to be squeezed together. For that bloodline, it is not difficult to pilot a Star Shuttle that has lost its manual and AI functions. We have already learned this lesson once. What? The person with the bloodline is here again? When Quafu heard the Grand Wizard's words, he jumped up. Because Quafu was 20 meters tall, he jumped 20 meters. When he landed again, the whole ground began to shake like an earthquake. The great shaman reminded Quafu of an unbearable past. More than 100 years ago, the person with the bloodline actually killed the entire Shebi Corpse tribe for revenge, a total of 10,000 shamans. However, he was also besieged by the 5 tribes. In the end, this person relied on an old star shuttle to escape from the Wu people's encirclement, which became the biggest humiliation for the Wu people after they were trapped in the Zhou-Tian star battle formation. Yes, otherwise, that Shebi zombie wouldn't have been killed by a mortal in the star shuttle. This can only be done by that bloodline. Clan leader, unfortunately, we did not launch this battle at the right time. We didn't expect that the bloodline would come of age at this time, and also enter the Zhou-Tian star battle formation. Looks like we can't underestimate these fish that escaped the net this time. Kwafu's expression became anxious. Although that bloodline hasn't held the flag planting ceremony, it is still in the state of an ordinary person. But with the magical power of that bloodline, it is hard to guarantee that it will not do something shocking. I don't know why. I have a feeling that we may fall short of success. But clan leader, no matter how magical that bloodline is, it is only immortal now. They can't have any influence on our suggestion. The Grand Wizard advised. No, I won't be surprised even if that bloodline does something magical. And thinking about it, now is the time when that bloodline is at its weakest. If we can take this opportunity to kill the descendant of that bloodline, then after we break this Zhou-Tian star battle formation, the whole world will belong to us, the Wu people. Kwafu said fiercely. I understand. I will arrange for the clan's heaven wizard to go after them. The Grand Wizard immediately said. No. Kwafu waved his hand. Even a tiger will do its best to catch a rabbit, let alone to deal with that bloodline. To be on the safe side, I will do it myself this time. With that, Kwafu left with big strides and began to run in the direction of the Taiwei district. Chapter 855. Fortunately, after the 12 warriors of the Changliang tribe were killed by the Gu Black Tortoise, there were no more large groups of Wu people chasing after them. Therefore, the temporary team of sword-bearers led by Gahan was able to advance towards Taiyan County at a faster speed. However, there was one person in the team who was like a walking corpse. This person was Old Chun, who had lost his son. What was even more tragic was that when the Gu Black Tortoise was fighting with the Wu people, the body of Old Chin's son was unfortunately stepped on by a Wu people. When an ordinary body was stepped on by a 5-meter-tall Wu people, the result was self-evident. His body looked like it had been run over by an 8-wheeled truck. Old Chun, who had woken up, couldn't take such a blow and fainted again. Helpless, Gahan could only arrange for a few people to take turns carrying Old Chun until he woke up again. At this time, he had become a walking corpse. His limbs were powerless, and his eyes were unfocused. He could only follow the team mechanically, like a zombie. This man is finished. Almost everyone, including Gahan, made this judgment for Old Chun in their hearts. If this old guy didn't pull himself together, he would probably be the next one to die. Of course, Gahan didn't have much pity for this kind of person with a weak heart. He was more concerned about how to safely bring this temporary team to Taiyan County, and then find traces of Liu Ling there and meet up with her. Guhan was very vigilant along the way. He arranged some of the young sword-bearers into groups of 2 and stationed them in the front, back, left, and right of the group. No one knew that there were scouts closely monitoring the situation along the way to prevent the risk of being ambushed by the sorcerer tribe. Unfortunately, Gahan's efforts seemed to be in vain. After leaving the ruins of Shenyang City and marching for an hour, they didn't meet any other Wu people, except for the 3 junior magi who were killed by the Gu Black Tortoise. This made the atmosphere of the whole team a lot more relaxed, and also made the people who had been hanging in suspense slightly relax. Until Leslie Dracula, who was in charge of scouting in front of the team, ran over to report that they had found a lot of wizards ahead, and there were more than 50 of them. This discovery made the whole team panic, but Gohan quickly calmed them down with his cold aura. Everyone, hide here. Gu Black Tortoise, you are responsible for protecting everyone here. Miss Dracula, take me to see those Wu people. After assigning tasks, Gahan climbed a hill stealthily under the lead of Leslie Dracula and looked down at a small plain below the hill. On the plain, there were indeed more than 50 Wu people moving around. However, these Wu people didn't seem to be vigilant at all, and they didn't have any murderous intent. A few Wu people were squatting together and playing with stones. It was the kind of game where they threw the stones up high and then saw how many small stones they could catch the next time they touched the stone. So, instead of saying that they were here to stop Gahan and the others, it was better to say that they were here to have fun. These are the Wu people of the Changliang tribe. Gahan judged. These Wu people were all more than 5 meters tall and had long tails. They were obviously the intermediate magi of the Changliang tribe. But why are they like this? They don't look like warriors at all, but more like children. Gohan's tone was a little confused, because they are children to begin with. Leslie Dracula curled her lips and said, I've read the information in the family. Although these Wu people can inherit the size and strength they had before they were reborn, their souls and memories cannot be reborn. Therefore, when they have just been reborn, they will definitely be like children. They will need the guidance of the elders in the tribe and the help of time to recover the original memories of the Wu people and have the combat power of a real adult. This will take about half a year. Leslie Dracula had a triumphant and excited look on her face as she explained, as if it was a great thing to be able to show off her knowledge in front of Guhan. After hearing this, Guhan immediately observed the movements in the entire valley. He found that it was just as Leslie Dracula had said. Among the large group of children, there were 2 Wu people with completely different temperaments. Although they looked cold, there was a faint, kind smile on their faces. Obviously, they were the teachers of the Wu people who were responsible for teaching these children. So, these Wu people in the valley are actually the children of the Changliang tribe who were reborn in the past 6 months. They haven't mastered real combat skills. Gahan said thoughtfully, in fact, these 50 Wu people are very easy to deal with, right? That being said, they're just a group of children. Are you going to do something to them? Leslie Dracula said, feeling a little sorry for them. Have you ever seen a child who is more than 5 meters tall? Gohan sneered. We are enemies of life and death. There is no need to care about hypocritical kindness. Besides, don't you think their situation is very similar to ours? They originally had great strength, but due to various reasons, they lost their own strength. If the Wu people can chase us, why can't we kill these so-called children? But won't this slow us down? What if the troops behind us catch up? Leslie Dracula raised another concern. Why do you think there are a group of Wu people's children in this valley? Gahan said calmly. The reason is simple. There must be a settlement of the Wu people nearby. It's very likely that this settlement is on our way to Tyne County. I've checked the map. There's a valley in front of us, and there is only one way to quickly pass through it. Otherwise, we will have to cross the mountains on both sides to go around it. In that case, I'm afraid it will take 5 to 6 hours. We don't have that much time to waste, so we can only defeat the Wu people tribe in front of us and pass through the valley. I understand. Leslie Dracula nodded. Although she could not bear to do it, humans and the Wu people had a life-and-death feud after all. Now is not the time to be a saint. Go find the Gu Black Tortoise now and ask him to bring everyone to this hill. Gahan ordered Leslie Dracula. Leslie Dracula immediately rushed down the hill and found the Gu Black Tortoise, who was trying to hide everyone in a bush. She then told him about Guhan's order. Therefore, the swordsmen who had just hidden themselves with great difficulty immediately destroyed their concealment and climbed up the hill with the Gu Black Tortoise. About 7 minutes had passed. It was during this time that they climbed up the sticky ball and saw the situation in the valley again. Everyone could not help but be dumbfounded and could not believe what they saw. This was because there were more than 50 corpses of the Changliang tribe lying on the ground in the valley. Each of the corpses had died with their heads separated from their bodies. It looked like a horrible massacre. In the middle of all the corpses was Guhan's cold back. He held a few fan-sized leaves in his hand and used them to gently wipe the blue blood off his sword. This movement was very calm, very gentle, and very scary. Come down. You are too eye-catching on the hill, Gahan said to the people on the hill. Only then did they realize what he meant. They jumped down the hill one by one and walked into the valley that was full of killings. Did you kill all of them by yourself? A swordsman in his 50s said in disbelief. A person who has lost his sword essence actually killed more than 50 Changliang tribe intermediate sorcerers? How did you do it? Are you a human or a ghost? These are not real intermediate sorcerers. They are just a group of children. Bullying a group of children is nothing. Gohan shook his head. Miss Dracula, please explain to these people. I will go ahead and investigate the situation of the Wu People's tribe. After saying this, Gohan left the valley full of corpses without looking back. He was going to investigate the Wu People's tribe. Even if these corpses are all children, they are still children with rocket launchers. But 7 minutes is too fast. Leslie Dracula murmured as she watched Gohan leave. Qingpin, is this what makes you special? At the same time, Gohan did not pay attention to the surrounding environment. Instead, he focused all his attention on the Qingpin sword in his hand. Unfortunately, because he could not use the sword essence, Gohan could not communicate with the cute Qingpin. He could only make all kinds of guesses in secret. In fact, Gohan did not expect that he would be able to kill over 50 intermediate sorcerers of the Wu people in just 7 minutes. Just as Leslie Dracula had said, these children of the Wu people were all children with rocket launchers. Apart from not knowing how to use their powers, they were exactly the same as the real intermediate sorcerers of the Wu people. Their physical defense was especially strong. Gohan would need dozens of sword strikes to kill an intermediate sorcerer. Therefore, according to Gohan's original plan, he would need to spend 20 minutes or even more to kill these Wu people. However, just as he was about to use the heavenly sword to fight, the Qingpin sword suddenly sent a message to Gohan's mind, asking him to use it to fight. Although Gohan did not understand why, he still switched to the Qingpin sword. What happened next was like a dream. The defenses that required dozens of attacks from the heavenly sword to break through were like paper in the face of the poor. They were broken with a single poke, and a head would fly into the air with each attack. Before the two Sorcerer Tribe instructors, who had been targeted by Gohan, could react to what had happened, Gohan had already chopped off their heads with a single slash. This feeling was like a military dagger cutting through tofu. There was not even the slightest bit of resistance. Therefore, the following battle to kill these 50 children did not need to be described. Out of the 7 minutes that Gohan spent, almost 6 minutes was used to chase after these children who were running away in panic. The actual time of the battle did not exceed a minute. These shamans with amazing physical defense died in Gohan's hands one by one. As expected, you are not a simple ancient sword. Qingpin. Gohan stared at the sword for a long time before letting out a long sigh. Just now, he recalled what I Ching had told him. She had told him that he would definitely die in the hands of Qingpin in the future. She had told him to stay away from Qingpin. Gohan did not think much of it at the time, but now, there's nothing to look at. Qingpin is my sword mistress. Gohan's expression returned to normal. Be careful. Do not panic. Chapter 856. Miss Gu Xuanwu, don't you think this place is a bit strange? A swordsman walked to Gu Xuanwu's side and said, Strange? What's strange about it? Gu Xuanwu asked curiously. I don't know why either. I just feel very strange looking at the corpses of the Wu people all over the ground. The swordsman said in a daze. Clearly, he didn't know what made him feel strange. Just as Gu Xuanwu was about to say something, Gohan's figure appeared in the valley once again. Let's go, we can pass through the mountain road in front of us. Hearing Gohan say this, everyone let out a long sigh of relief. It seemed like there wasn't much of a threat in front of them. As long as they passed through this mountain road, they would be able to reach Taiyan County and meet up with the descendants of the Lun Yin family. Did you wipe out the Wu people's settlement in front of us? Did you encounter any troublesome opponents? Leslie Dracula asked Gohan curiously. Although there's indeed a settlement there are only 2 or 3 junior magi Wu people left. They were all taken care of in a minute or two. How could there be any troublesome opponents? However, it seems like the Wu people have indeed sent all their main forces to the front line of planet Savu, Gohan replied. That's good. Leslie Dracula revealed a joyful expression. It seems like we can safely meet up with Miss Ling and the others. This is not good news. Gohan shook his head. This means that the front line of planet Suzaku will definitely be under pressure from the entire Wu people. Previously, they said that without our support, they can only last until around 12 noon. It is already 10 a.m. now, and they can only last for 2 hours at most. If we still can't reach the front line after 2 hours, the entire human race will be in extreme danger. I actually hope that the Wu people will use a lot of their forces to chase after us. That way, the front line of planet Suzaku will be able to take a breather, Guhan said as he looked into the distance. Boss Hongyu, the area under the Sun Horse of Stars control had been completely lost. Half of the comrades had died in battle, while the remaining half had been transferred to the areas under the control of Moon Deer of Extended Net and Winged Fire Snake. Boss, if that place falls as well, then all we have left is the Jun Water Ape. Planet Suzaku will fall. On the human side of planet Suzaku, a man covered in wounds reported to a female sword wielder wearing a fiery red coat. Things aren't that bad yet. Moon Deer of Extended Net and Winged Fire Snake are both strategic places. It won't be easy for Wu people to capture them. As long as we can wait for reinforcements, we can push out in one go. The fiery red cloaked female sword wielder, who is also the guardian sword wielder of the Vermilion Bird Star, Hongyu, said calmly. Boss, don't blame me for telling you the truth. Those sword wielder should have arrived an hour ago, but we haven't received any news from them. I also heard that not only are the sword wielder responsible for supporting us on planet Suzaku missing, but the two groups of sword wielder responsible for supporting the Z-Way Imperial Star and Supreme Star have also disappeared. Right now, Lord Sun is so anxious that he's about to collapse. The man said with a face full of despair. Trash. What's the point of saying all this now? Do you think it can solve the problem? Hongyu glared at the man. You come with me. We're going to the area under the control of Moon Deer of Extended Net and support the battle there. But boss, weren't you in the sneak attack just now? One of the men panicked. The sorcerer race had launched a sneak attack on the suppressed Imperial Stars, and Hongyu had been heavily injured during the sneak attack. It was said that her sword lady's protective shield had been broken, and it had almost been broken when its durability ran out. If it wasn't for the fact that Hongyu was powerful and a sword master, planet Suzaku would have been the second Imperial Star to fall. What can we do now? Am I supposed to stand here and watch you fight, but I'm not going to do anything? Hongyu waved her long sleeves. There's no need to say anything. We have to hold on. I believe that the sword wielder who will support us will arrive at the last moment. The man asked with some fear. Boss, what if they really can't make it? Then we can only do our duty as sword wielder and die on the battlefield. Hongyu said without turning her head. That's right. Ling and the others crashed here. After arriving at Taiyan County, Gahan immediately saw a place with thick smoke. He led his troops over there, and they discovered a star shuttle that had fallen to the ground. Seeing the sparks and smoke coming out of the star shuttle, Guhan was sure that this star shuttle had crashed not long ago. This was the star shuttle that Liunian Ling and the others were on. Little brother Gahan, look, there are 2 burial mounds here. A sword wielder said as he pointed at a forest not far from where the star shuttle had crashed. 2 small mounds could be seen floating in the forest. These were the burial mounds that had just been buried. It looks like 2 of our comrades have been sacrificed. The rest of the sword wielder let out a deep sigh. They didn't expect to encounter the bodies of 2 sword wielder first. It seemed like his party was luckier than Fleeting Time's party. His party was still at full strength, and not a single swordsman had died on the battlefield. The surface of this mound is still wet, so it should have been formed within half an hour to 50 minutes. That means Ling and the others have been gone for half an hour to 50 minutes. Guhan grabbed a handful of soil on the grave mound and felt the amount of water contained in the soil. Then, he made the following judgment. This was a rather bad discovery. Half an hour to 50 minutes was enough for Liunian Ling and the others to walk dozens of kilometers. Unless Gahan could find the direction that Liunian Ling had gone, it would be very difficult to meet up with Liunian Ling and the others. Comrade Gahan, I found a series of footprints here. Come take a look. Just as Gahan was thinking about the direction that Liunian Ling and the others might have gone, a middle-aged sword wielder, suddenly jumped out and said excitedly. Gahan ran over to take a look. Sure enough, he found a series of footprints on the soft ground. There were a lot of footprints. It seemed that more than 10 people had passed through here. Obviously, these were the footprints of Liu Ling and the others. Great! Now, I finally know which direction to chase after them. Leslie Dracula said excitedly when she saw the series of footprints. No, they definitely didn't go in this direction. Gohan rubbed his chin. The people from the Liu family are not so stupid to leave such obvious clues for the Wu people. So these footprints must be fake. Ling is setting up a trap. They definitely didn't go in this direction. Leslie Dracula was rendered speechless by Gahan's words. She could only stomp her little feet. Then tell me, which direction did Miss Ling and the others go in? These footprints remind me that the surrounding soil is soft. If they fled on a large scale, it's impossible that they didn't leave footprints. All of you, look around and see which direction is the flattest. Gohan said loudly to the sword wielder. Very soon, the sword wielder began to move. After a careful search, they finally concluded that the ground in the north was the flattest. Ling really went north. Gohan seemed to have already guessed Liu Ling's choice. North? Isn't the north where planet Suzaku is? Leslie Dracula was shocked when she heard Gahan's words. That is the most intense battlefield between the Wu people and the humans. There are Wu people everywhere. Why would Miss Ling bring people there? The reason is simple. The people from the Liu family will definitely not sit back and watch the Zhou Tian Star battle formation be destroyed. Even if there is only a sliver of a chance, they will fight for it. So, Ling will definitely go to planet Suzaku to find a way to break through the Wu people's blockade. Gohan clenched his fist. Pass down the order. Everyone head north and catch up to Ling and the others. Okay. Leslie Dracula nodded and began to pass down Gohan's order. Goo Black Tortoise, come here. Gohan called the Goo Black Tortoise over. Your sword essence is still there, so you can use the speed of famous sword wielder to move forward. I want you to immediately head north and search for traces of Ling and the others. Once you find them, bring them back and meet up with us. The Goo Black Tortoise didn't immediately agree. He hesitated for a bit and asked, Then what about you guys? If the Wu people catch up when I leave, won't you guys be in danger? It's fine. With my Qingpin sword, a few small Wu people won't be a problem, Gohan said as he stroked his Qingpin sword. Although he didn't know what was special about the Qingpin sword, he was certain of one thing. The Qingpin sword was the natural nemesis of all Wu people. It could easily break through the defenses of the Wu people's bodies. As long as he had the Qingpin sword, Gahan was not afraid of the Wu people. Okay, the Goo Black Tortoise clenched his teeth and said, Dad, you must take care of yourself. You can't die before you see my mother. Then he quickly headed north. Miss Ling, where are you taking us? At the same time, on an empty road, a team of humans was trudging with difficulty. Different from Gahan's team, Liu Ling's team was in a more miserable state. The sword wielder in Gahan's team was at least in a healthy state. However, the sword wielder in Liu Ling's team were all injured. Some of them even had broken bones, so they could only support each other to move forward. Therefore, this team's speed was only about a third of Gahan's team's. We want to go to Suzaku. Otherwise, the entire human race will be finished. Liu Ling said with incomparable determination. It was just as Gahan had guessed. Chapter 857. In the middle of the extremely long procession, there was a pair of sword-bearers supporting each other. One of them had a broken left leg, and the other had a broken right leg. Working together, they could barely walk forward. However, one of the sword-bearers was obviously more seriously injured because there was a huge wound on the left side of his body. Although he had simply bandaged it with his clothes, drops of blood still flowed out of the wound as he walked. For people who were seriously ill, every drop of blood they lost was equivalent to losing a portion of their strength. During the long walk, this sword-bearer had lost a lot of blood. Finally, he felt his vision go black, and he fell forward to the ground. Caught off guard, the sword-bearer also fell. As soon as the two sword-bearers fell, the procession was in chaos. In the end, they all stopped where they were, unwilling to take another step forward. "Miss Ling, we really can't go any further," a sword-bearer in his 40s said to Liu Ling with a distressed expression. "Old Wang has fainted due to excessive blood loss. There are 4 or 5 people in the procession who are in the same situation as Old Wang, and they can't hold on any longer. They need to rest, otherwise the procession will collapse if they continue to walk like this." This sword-bearer was speaking the truth because in the next second, another sword-bearer fell to the ground, unconscious due to excessive blood loss. Liu Ling wanted to force everyone to continue forward, but when the words were at the tip of her tongue, she couldn't bring herself to say it. If Guhan was here, then Guhan would definitely force these sword-bearers to continue forward, or perhaps he would simply give up on those heavily injured sword-bearers and only lead those sword-bearers who were still able to move forward. However, Liu Ling was ultimately not Guhan, and she couldn't bring up the idea of abandoning those who were seriously injured. "Miss Ling, please forgive me for being blunt, but why do you have to go north? That's the battlefield between the Wu people and us. Before we reach there, we'll definitely be discovered by the Wu people, and then we'll all be killed," the sword-bearer said in confusion. "Trust me, I have a way. As long as we get close, we have a 50% chance of entering the territory of planet Shizuku," Liu Ling said sincerely. "Unfortunately, I'm afraid I won't be able to wait until then." The swordsman gave Liu Ling a meaningful look. Then, 2 streams of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and he collapsed to the ground. "Senior Zhu, what's wrong?" Liu Ling hurriedly helped the sword-bearer up. After the star shuttle crashed, this sword-bearer with the surname Zhu became Liu Ling's assistant. He helped Liu Ling solve many problems and was also responsible for mediating the various conflicts in this temporary team. At present, he was the person that Liu Ling relied on the most. "I'm sorry, Miss Ling. In truth, my internal organs were already damaged when I fell. It looks like I can't hold on much longer. Pooch." The sword-bearer suddenly coughed out a large mouthful of blood. Fleeting time, Ling did not dodge, allowing the blood to splatter on his pristine white robes. "Miss Ling, please listen to me, old Zhu." The sword-bearer used his last breath to say, "You don't need to worry about us. Even if we get to planet Shizuku, we won't be of any use. It's better to let us find a place to hide, and then you can charge in by yourself. Without us dragging you down, you'll definitely be able to succeed. As long as you get to planet Shizuku, it'll be like 100 sword-bearers arriving. Planet Shizuku will be saved, the Zhou Star Battle Formation will be saved, and all of humanity will be saved, Poochie." The sword-bearer named Zhu coughed out the last mouthful of blood. Then his eyes rolled back, and he fell to the ground. He instantly stopped breathing and became the 3rd sword-bearer to be sacrificed in Liu Ling's group. Liu Ling stood up and looked at the sword-bearers sitting on the ground. Although they weren't screaming, their faces were filled with pain. These people had completely lost the ability to fight. If Liu Ling had to leave them here and leave by herself, how could Liu Ling feel at ease? "Miss Ling, you can go. Don't worry about us." The words of the sword-bearer named Zhu echoed the thoughts of the other sword-bearers. They all knew that they were burdens to Liu Ling. "Miss Ling, we'll find a place to hide. You don't have to worry about us. If you can defeat the sorcerer tribe as soon as possible and save the entire heavenly cycle star formation, we might have a chance to meet again. If we continue to waste time, the entire human race will be finished." Yes. Miss Ling, you should leave quickly. Miss Ling, we beg you. Please leave quickly." Everyone kept begging Liu Ling to leave by herself. When Liu Ling heard these words, she felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. However, she also knew that it was best for her to leave by herself. As long as she could reach the sun, hold the flag planting ceremony, and recover her ability to fight, she would be able to use her billion sword art to save the Zhou Star Battle Formation. "Everyone, please hide well. Ling, I'm sorry, so I left first." Liu Ling bowed deeply to these people, and then began to run northward without looking back. After running for about 10 minutes, Liu Ling suddenly felt the ground begin to tremble. Liu Ling quickly jumped onto a tree beside her and looked into the distance from the canopy. She saw a giant over 100 meters tall, slowly walking forward at the end of the horizon. The gargantuan was walking at a leisurely pace. However, the gargantuan was more than 100 meters tall, and each step it took was equivalent to 100 steps for a normal human being. Even though the gargantuan was walking at a leisurely pace, it was still 100 times faster than a normal human being. The gargantuan was closing in on the fleeting moment at an extremely fast speed and was only a kilometer away from the fleeting moment. Turtle breathing technique. Liu Ling immediately used the secret technique of the Liu clan to hide all of her aura. She hid in the canopy, not daring to show any signs of sadness. As expected, this method worked. The giant did not expect someone to be hiding in the canopy, so he simply walked past it and headed in the direction that Liu Ling had come from. That's the Qiangliang tribe's great shaman Quafu. I heard that he's 100 meters tall, and it seems like it's true. Liu Ling breathed a sigh of relief after escaping danger. Just as she was about to continue running, her body suddenly froze. Oh no, this Quafu is heading in the direction that I came from. If he goes any further, won't the injured sword-bearers be done for? Liu Ling paled. There were only 10 minutes left before she left. In such a short period of time, the sword-bearers would still be resting on the ground and would not have the time to hide. It had taken her 10 minutes to run here, but this Quafu would only need 2 minutes to cover the same distance. In 2 minutes, the sword-bearers would be dead for sure. Liu Ling found that she was faced with a difficult choice. She could continue moving forward according to her original plan. Without the burden of the sword-bearers, she was 80% confident that she could charge into the territory of planet Suzuku and carry out the flag-planting ceremony on the sun. Or she could directly carry out the flag-planting ceremony on planet Suzuku and recover all of her strength to repel the damned Wu people. However, if she did that, the sword-bearers who were left behind would die for sure. Of course, Liu Ling could also turn back immediately to stall Quafu and buy time for the sword-bearers to retreat. Right now, Liu Ling was also immortal. Like Gahan, she had mastered ancient martial arts and had the strength to fight against the Wu people. She would have no problem fighting against a junior or intermediate shaman. However, against a great shaman like Quafu, Liu Ling would be courting death. Perhaps Liu Ling could buy some time in the beginning, but it was only for a short while. After that, Liu Ling would be the one to die. To put it bluntly, the wisest decision Fleeting Time Ling could make was to ignore the seriously injured sword-bearers and head to Planet Siska's battlefield by himself. Because the great shaman, Quafu, had left the battlefield, Fleeting Time Ling had a higher chance of entering the battlefield. However, Liu Ling was a descendant of the Fleeting family. How could she watch as her comrades were trampled by Quafu? What should I do? What should I choose? Liu Ling kept asking herself this question. Lord Kenzu, please tell Ling, if it were you, what would you choose? Liu Ling asked her ancestral calendar. At that moment, she recalled a story from her ancestors. During the Swallow Capital's retreat, the sword ancestor, who was in charge of bringing up the rear, had fought bitterly by the Yellow River for 3 days and 3 nights to ensure that the last 10,000 survivors could successfully hide in the dimensional rift. From the beginning to the end, he had not taken a step back, nor had he given up on a single survivor. I will not give up on anyone. Liu Ling bit her lips, her eyes filled with determination. She turned around and ran in the direction she came from. She had to catch up to Quafu and stall him to buy time for the other sword-bearers to retreat. Sigh. Lin, this child, how many times have I told her not to believe the stories written in these books? Fleeting Wooden Fish was pacing back and forth in his granddaughter's room on Fleeting Time Mountain in Beijing. He looked at the Legend of Kenzu book on his granddaughter's desk and complained. The ancestor is too shameless. Lord Kenzu clearly left 100,000 survivors to the Yuan Ko to buy time for the others to escape. How did Kenzu end up guarding the Yellow River by himself for 3 days and 3 nights? Fleeting wooden fish looked at the bookmark paragraph in the book. Forget it. I'll tell the editor to change the 10,000 survivors to 100,000 survivors when the book is re-edited. Fleeting wooden fish said as he stroked his white beard. Chapter 858. When Liuyan Ling made up her mind to entangle Quafu, even if she had to sacrifice herself to protect the injured sword-bearers, Liuyan Ling discovered a very serious problem. That is, she seemed to be unable to catch up with Quafu at all. Quafu took a step and covered a distance of 100 meters. 10 steps, and he could cross a kilometer. With such speed, even if Liuyan Ling ran with all her might, she would not be able to catch up. Instead, the distance between the two was getting further and further. This simply put Liuyan Ling in a state of despair. This meant that she did not even have the qualifications to entangle Quafu. Seeing that Quafu was about to reach her starting position, Liuyan Ling could only let out an unwilling roar. Other than that, she could not do anything. At this time, Quafu, who had been moving, suddenly stopped. At the same time, a wooden staff appeared in his hand. This was Quafu's weapon, the peachwood staff. It seemed that Quafu was fighting with someone. Not good. Quafu is attacking those sword-bearers. Liuyan Ling used all her strength to run forward. After a few minutes, she finally arrived near the battlefield. However, she was surprised to find that the one fighting with Quafu was not her own sword-bearers, but a strange female sword-bearer. I remember. Her name is Gu Xuanwu, Gohan's sister. Isn't she in the same star shuttle as Gohan? Why is she here? Is Gohan also nearby? Liuyan Ling could not help but think to herself. Gohan's face involuntarily appeared in her mind. Damn, now is not the time to think about that bastard. Liuyan Ling shook her head. It seemed that she wanted to throw Gohan's face out of her mind. Then, she began to focus on the battle between Gu Xuanwu and Quafu. I didn't expect her to be a sword master. Seeing how Gu Xuanwu wielded the Tai Yi sword and fought with Quafu, Liuyan Ling couldn't help but exclaim. But what happened next left Liuyan Ling even more astonished. The Tai Yi sword suddenly shot out surges of sword chi, cutting into Quafu's face and leaving behind visible wounds. Clearly, these sword chis were truly powerful sword chis, not fake sword chis without the support of sword essences. This Gu Xuanwu can actually use sword essence. At this moment, Liuyan Ling also discovered that the Gu Xuanwu did not seem to be affected by the power of the stars and could freely use the sword chi. At this moment, the battle between the Gu Xuanwu and Quafu had also reached its climax. Quafu seemed to be annoyed by the jumping ants. He stabbed the peachwood staff in his hand into the ground, and the end of the staff was deeply embedded into the ground. Then, almost in an instant, more than 20 peach woods suddenly burst out of the ground. Like pairs of vicious tentacles, they grabbed at the Gu Xuanwu. Primal Chaos Heaven Splitter. The Gu Xuanwu used Primal Chaos Heaven Splitter to cut off the peach with tentacles in front of her. But before she could even catch her breath, 6 more peach wood tentacles reached for her. Primal Chaos Heaven Splitter. With another Primal Chaos Heaven Splitter, the Gu Xuanwu severed the 6 peach wood tentacles behind her. But, just as the Gu Xuanwu had said, Primal Chaos Heaven Splitter wasn't a technique that could be used continuously because it would harm the soul origin of a human, and the Gu Xuanwu was no exception to this. So, when the Gu Xuanwu struggled to use Primal Chaos Heaven Splitter for the 3rd time, her body began to sway, and she began to see stars. At the same time, the world around her darkened, and she felt 3 tentacles grabbing onto her waist. The Gu Xuanwu instinctively tried to struggle, but 3 more peach wood tentacles grabbed onto her right arm, and 2 more tentacles wrapped around the Tai sword. The 5 peach wood tentacles exerted strength in an attempt to pull the Tai Yi sword out of the Gu Xuanwu's hand. If the Gu Xuanwu were to lose the Tai Yi sword, she would lose the ability to fight as a sword wielder. Quafu, your opponent is me. At this critical moment, a figure suddenly jumped out from behind Quafu. She stepped on Quafu's huge body, and with an extremely nimble leap, she reached the top of Quafu's head and stabbed the 3-foot sword in her hand into Quafu's scalp. Fortunately, The 3-foot sword in Liu Yanling's hand was the human Dao sword Maiden's 3-foot sword. Otherwise, an ordinary famed sword Maiden wouldn't have been able to break through Quafu's defense. However, even the 3-foot sword couldn't completely break through a great Magus's physical defense. So, the 3-foot sword only managed to stab the tip of the sword into Quafu's flesh, and the damage it caused wasn't too great. I can smell it. That damnable smell of my bloodline. Quafu let out a furious roar. The peachwood tentacle that was holding the black tortoise loosened its grip, and the other tentacle reached for Fleeting Time's Ling, who was hovering above him. Pop! Liu Yanling didn't manage to dodge in time, and was struck on her waist by the peachwood tentacles. She then fell from Quafu's head. She fell from a height of over 100 meters and landed heavily on the ground. Slight bone-cracking noises could even be heard. Right after that, another tentacle hit on the body of the 3-foot sword, and the 3-foot sword fell down along with its owner. However, Quafu intentionally whipped the 3-foot sword towards another direction with a great force. The 3-foot sword flew like a golf ball, and soon disappeared from Liu Yanling's sight. My 3-foot sword. Liu Yanling watched her 3-foot sword fly out of her sight, and let out a despairing shout. The 3-foot sword was simply too important to Liu Yanling right now. Apart from the 3-foot sword, Liu Yanling didn't have any other weapon that could break through Quafu's defense. If Liu Yanling still had her sword essence, as long as she thought about it, the 3-foot sword would come back in an instant, no matter how far it flew. Unfortunately, Liu Yanling couldn't use her sword essence right now. Therefore, unless Liu Yanling picked up the 3-foot sword herself, the 3-foot sword would never come back. Of course, if Liu Yanling still had her sword essence, she wouldn't have ended up like this. She only needed to use her billion sword spell, and even a senior magus like Quafu would be beaten up by Liu Yanling. This wasn't an exaggeration at all. After the descendants of the Liu clan entered the Shanhai Pass, the Shanhai Pass had been peaceful for 3 whole years. The only thing that wasn't peaceful was that the descendants of the Liu clan would beat up 3 or 4 senior magi. Those senior magi could only run for their lives. If they weren't careful, they would die in the hands of the descendants of the Liu clan. Unfortunately, these were all ifs. The reality was that Liu Yanling didn't hold a flag planting ceremony, so she couldn't use her sword essence. She could only fall to the ground and watch as Quafu laughed hideously. Then, 7 peachwood tentacles grabbed towards Liu Yanling at the same time, wanting to tear her into pieces. Chaos split the heavens. At the crucial moment, a sword light flashed, and the 7 peachwood tentacles were sliced in 2. Gu Xuanwu then stood in front of Liu Yanling. Liu Yanling noticed that there were huge wounds on Gu Xuanwu's arms and thighs. Clearly, Gu Xuanwu had used a method to break free from the control of the peachwood tentacles and saved Liu Yanling in the nick of time. "Thank you," Liu Yanling said gratefully. "You don't need to thank me. If not for you, my Tai sword would have been snatched away by that senior magus. You're the one who saved me," Gu Xuanwu quickly said. In order to deal with Liu Yanling, Quafu had split half of the tentacles that were grabbing onto Gu Xuanwu. This greatly weakened his control over Gu Xuanwu, and he also managed to protect Gu Xuanwu's Tai sword. That was why she was able to break free from Quafu's tentacles. "Humans, do you think that you can escape from me, Quafu?" Quafu's breath landed on Liu Yanling, and it almost blew Liu Yanling away. "Let's leave this place first." Gu Xuanwu grabbed Liu Yanling and tried to take her away. "You want to leave? Have you asked for my permission, Quafu?" Quafu questioned. Then, another 50 peachwood tentacles flew out from the ground. Not only were there more than before, but the tentacles were also twice as thick. Clearly, Quafu had used his true strength. "Not good. Hurry up and leave. I'll hold them off here." Fleeting Time Lin immediately pushed Gu Xuanwu away when he saw this scene and urged him to leave. "Are you crazy? Do you still think that you're the young miss of the Lunyan clan? You don't even have your sword essence anymore. Why do you have to stand in front of me?" Gu Xuanwu blocked Liu Yanling behind him instead. "Quafu, don't think that you've already won. Take my chaotic windstorm. The Tai, sword in Gu Xuanwu's hand swept out a massive amount of sword qi. The sword qi gathered into a huge windstorm, and with Gu Xuanwu as the center, it wreaked havoc in the surroundings. Wherever the windstorm swept, all the peachwood tentacles were instantly smashed into pieces, turning into a pile of wood powder that was mixed in the windstorm. What kind of ghastly sword qi is this? Seeing that his peachwood tentacles were completely destroyed, Quafu felt even more confused and furious. He stretched out his hand, wanting to tear the windstorm apart. But the moment the back of his hand came into contact with the windstorm, Quafu's skin was torn apart, revealing the flesh underneath. The power of the windstorm was so great that it seemed to have broken through the defense of Quafu's skin. Unfortunately, it only broke through Quafu's skin. Although his skin was torn apart, Quafu's hand did not retreat at all. Instead, he took a step forward and grabbed the center of the windstorm, as if he was grabbing a scallop. Then, he exerted force with both hands at the same time, forcibly tearing the entire windstorm apart. F***CK. Seeing his primal chaos storm being forcefully torn apart by Quafu, Gu Xuanwu was speechless other than F***CK. Because this move not only consumed a large amount of the solid black tortoise's sword essence, but it also consumed the solid black tortoise's soul source. Now, the solid black tortoise was as weak as a starving ghost that hadn't eaten for several weeks. All of you go to hell. Quafu's hand was still bleeding, but he didn't care about it anymore. Right now, he was eager to kill these two humans, especially the woman with the bloodline. As long as he could kill the descendant of the bloodline, even if the Zhou Tian star battle formation wasn't broken in the end, everything would be worth it. Chapter 859. The situation seemed to have reached a desperate point. The Gu Black Tortoise, the only one who could fight, had lost its ability to fight after using its ultimate move. Fleeting Cold situation was even worse. He was already in despair when he could not use his sword essence, and now he had lost his only weapon, the 3-foot sword. Although Liu Ling still had the Yixian sword and the Heaven Inquiring sword, Liu Ling had placed them in her dimensional pocket. Liu Ling, who could not use her sword, could not open her dimensional pocket. Speaking of dimensional pockets, Liu Ling was filled with helplessness. Liu Ling was the descendant of the Lunyan family. As the strongest family in the world, Liu Ling's dimensional pocket naturally had many life-saving items. Some precious items could even turn the situation around, and it was not impossible to directly kill this Quafu. But once the sword was sealed, the dimensional pocket could not be used. All the items were useless. Go to hell. That descendant of the bloodline. As such, Quafu did not intend to use the tentacles to end the battle. Instead, he wanted to use his fist to end it. A fist the size of a train descended from the sky, smashing towards Liu Ling and the Gu Black Tortoise. Liu Ling might be able to dodge it with her last bit of strength, but the Gu Black Tortoise could not move on its own. If Liu Ling wanted to escape, she could only leave the Gu Black Tortoise here. I'm sorry, grandfather. Ling can't be someone who runs away. I can't lose the dignity of the Lunyan family. Liu Ling made up her mind. She suddenly pulled open her collar, revealing her fair and supple breasts. Fine. That was not the main point. The main point was the pendant that hung in front of Liu Ling's chest. Is it time to use her? Holding the pendant in her hand, Liu Ling fell into a dilemma. Even when she was being chased by a meteor stage Yuan Ko on Changyang Mountain, Liu Ling had never thought of using this pendant. This pendant had been passed down from Kenzu's hand to Liu Ling's. In between, no one had ever used this pendant, so unless it was absolutely necessary, Liu Ling would never use this pendant. Screw it. I'm the only direct bloodline left in the Lunyan clan. How can I die earlier than that bastard? I can't die here. Gohan's face appeared in Liu Ling's mind. She gritted her teeth and prepared to activate the pendant's ability. At this critical moment, a powerful arm suddenly wrapped around Liu Ling's chest and grabbed the solid black tortoise. In the blink of an eye, Liu Ling felt herself fly into the air. There was a loud sound on the ground as she landed on a large tree. Guhan, you're really here? Fleeting time Lin looked at Guhan, who was hugging him, and his eyes were filled with gentleness. This was already the second time Guhan had appeared to save her at the most critical moment. The first time was in Chanyang Mountain. At that time, Lin Yinling was about to go crazy from the loneliness of the trial array. When she saw Guhan appear in front of her, she felt as if she had found the safest harbor. But in fact, this should be the third time. Guhan had also saved Liu Yinling at the most critical moment in Yuzhong City's emergency response center. But at that time, they had met in Liu Yinling's mind. The situation had been unexpectedly promiscuous. Liu Yinling's mind was filled with some unbearable memories, so the rescue had unexpectedly faded a lot. Put on your clothes first. Guhan glanced down and said calmly. Liu Yinling let out a scream. Only then did she realize that her situation was very bad, because she had a polar pendant just now. Her collar had been pulled to her chest. What was more annoying was that at this time, Guhan's hand was holding the position below her chest. At the same time, because of the effect of gravity, the bottom of her pair of opie was just resting on Guhan's arm. In this way, the opie was equivalent to being pushed upward. The two little rabbits couldn't wait to jump out from the open collar. At the same time, because of Liu Yinling's bad habit of not wearing a bra, more than half of the little rabbits had already run out. The two big red eyes were also looming under the clothes. She believed that with Guhan's perspective, he could definitely see it clearly. Liu Yinling immediately prepared to fasten the buttons on her collar again. But before she could move, her pair of little rabbits suddenly felt Guhan's arm holding her tightly again. Then, she flew up again and landed on another tree after a somersault. At this time, Liu Yinling saw that the tree she had just been perched on had been uprooted by Quafu and then inserted into the ground upside down. The whole tree had turned into a pile of debris. That was close, Liu Yinling exclaimed. If it weren't for Guhan's timely reaction just now, she would have been crushed together with a big tree. Just as this small, rejoicing thought fell, Liu Yinling suddenly felt a chill coming from her opie. Looking down, Liu Yinling's face instantly turned red like a monkey's butt. As a result, after this violent toss, Liu Yinling's clothes began to be torn open from the collar position. The two little rabbits directly escaped from Liu Yinling's collar and trembled as they admired the outside world. Forget it. You can watch if you like. Anyway, it's not like you haven't seen it before. Liu Yinling could be considered to have smashed the jar. When she was in her own sea of knowledge, which part of Liu Yinling's body hadn't Guhan seen? A pair of little rabbits benefited him. At most, he could just treat it as a replay. Put it on. In a few tenths of a second, Guhan took off his casual clothes and directly put it on Liu Yinling's body, putting the pair of cute little rabbits back in. Because Guhan was only wearing casual clothes, relatively, Guhan's little rabbits were blatantly exposed. All right, using the word little rabbit to describe a man would always feel a little creepy. Seeing Guhan's somewhat familiar yet somewhat strange, strong body, Liu Yinling's heart throbbed like a young girl. Liu Yinling hurriedly suppressed this throbbing in her heart. Now is not the time to think about these things. Hold this well. Don't lose it again. Guhan stuffed a hard thing into Liu Yinling's hand. Don't misunderstand, this hard thing was not the hard thing that you imagine, but a sword hilt. Liu Yinling looked down. What Guhan handed to her was the 3-foot sword's hilt. Why is my sword in your hand? Liu Yinling asked in disbelief. When I rushed over, this sword just happened to hit my head. Guhan touched Liu Yinling's small hand. I'll settle this account with you after I deal with Quafu. Protect my sister. Don't let any harm come to her. Guhan handed the solid black tortoise to Liu Yinling on the other side. Then, Guhan's feet stepped on the tree trunk, and his whole body directly pounced towards Quafu, who was looking for Liu Yinling's hiding place. Quafu boy, your opponent is me, Guhan shouted, and successfully attracted Quafu's attention. Why is there another damned human? Quafu let out an angry roar. This was already the third human who had the ability to fight. Could it be that the suppression of the power of the stars no longer worked? Kwafu's two fists punched towards Gahan, who was jumping in the air. Moreover, Kwafu's speed was not slow. The instant he punched, he could even tear a vacuum for a short period of time. The explosive sound produced could directly shatter a human's brain at a close distance. Logically speaking, in the face of Kwafu's fists, Gahan should choose to dodge. However, Gahan did the opposite. When he saw Kwafu's fists, he did not dodge. Instead, he directly collided with the opponent's fists. I hit him. Kwafu was surprised to feel that his fists seemed to have hit something, but in the next second, he regretted it. This human was not injured by his fists. Instead, he jumped up along Kwafu's fingers and directly jumped on the back of Kwafu's hand. As mentioned before, because Kwafu forcibly tore the chaotic windstorm of the solid black tortoise, the skin and flesh on the back of his hand were torn by the chaotic windstorm, revealing the blue flesh inside. Gohan stood on the back of Kwafu's hand, which was equivalent to standing directly on Kwafu's defenseless flesh. Chaotic Sky Splitter. Gohan held Qingpin in his hand and used Chaotic Sky Splitter on the defenseless flesh and blood. Even though the opponent was a great Magus equivalent to the Meteor Stage Yuan Ko, in a situation where he had lost the defense of his flesh and blood, facing the sword of Qingpin, which was extremely effective against the Wu people, there was no need to say more about the outcome. In fact, the effect of this sword was better than Gohan had imagined. In Gohan's imagination, Qingpin's sword would at most mince some of Kwafu's flesh and blood, but it would not be able to hurt Kwafu's bones. After all, bones were the hardest part of the human body, especially the bones of the Wu people. It was said that during the war between humans and the Wu people, even an immortal sword wielder would find it difficult to cut the bones of a great Magus of the Wu people. But unexpectedly, the bones of the Wu people's great magi were almost as strong as wood in front of Qingpin's sword. Gohan only felt a little resistance, and then a large part of the bones on the back of Kwafu's hand was cut off, and the bone marrow inside came out. Kwafu let out a shocking cry of pain. Under the pain, he instinctively used all his strength to throw Gohan away. But how could Gohan let go of such a good opportunity? He firmly nailed Qingpin's sword into Kwafu's bones, forcing it to stay in Kwafu's hand. Chapter 860. At this time, Kwafu was like a patient with Parkinson's disease. He kept waving his arms, trying to get rid of Gohan. But Gohan was firmly nailed to the back of Kwafu's hand, and he couldn't get rid of it. Suddenly, Kwafu pulled out his left hand and hit the back of his right hand hard. He wanted to kill Gohan on the back of his hand like a fly. Unfortunately, things were far from that simple. Seeing the whistling left hand coming at him, Gohan was already prepared. He used the Qingpin sword to tear a big hole on the back of Kwafu's hand. Then he frowned and got into the hole. His whole body was buried in Kwafu's palm. Kwafu's slap naturally landed on the back of his own hand, which was dripping with blood, and didn't hurt Gohan at all. Kwafu let out a painful scream because Gohan, who got into Kwafu's flesh, did not stay idle. The Qingpin sword in his hand pierced through Kwafu's palm. Originally, only the back of the hand was injured, but now the palm of Kwafu was split open. "Little bastard, you forced me to do this," Kwafu roared. Gohan, who was hiding in Kwafu's flesh, suddenly found that Kwafu's bones around him began to swell. Seeing this scene, Gohan reacted very quickly. He immediately wanted to rush out of the flesh. But it was Shao He who succeeded, and it was also Shao He who failed. Just now, because he was hiding in the flesh, he avoided Kwafu's slap. But at the same time, because he was hiding in the flesh, the resistance was far greater than the air. So at this time, there was no way for Gohan to quickly escape from Kwafu's flesh. Therefore, only half of Gohan's body escaped, but in the end, his feet were stuck by the rapidly growing bones, and he couldn't move. Seeing this scene from the canopy, Liu Ling immediately became anxious. She shouted to Gohan, "Be careful, Gohan. Kwafu is going to change into his original true body. You have to get out of his body, or you will be squeezed to death by him." In fact, even without Liu Ling's words, Gohan knew that Kwafu was going to change into his original true body. Although the 12 Wu people's tribes usually appeared in the form of half-human and half-beast, and the great Magi could get rid of the image of beasts and appear in the form of humans in front of the world, each great Magi had their own original true body. However, every great wizard had their own origin true body. This origin true body came from the wizard ancestor who gave them their bloodline, and it was equivalent to summoning the wizard ancestor's true body. Once the great Magi used their original true body, their strength would be greatly enhanced. From the meteor level to the universe level, they would forcibly cross a huge realm. This showed how powerful the original true body was. However, the great Magi couldn't often summon their original true bodies, just like how Gu Xian Wu had to consume his own soul to use the chaos split the sky. Using the original true body would also consume the great Magi's essence blood. The great Magi's original true body was strong, but once the transformation disappeared, the great Magi would instantly enter a weak state. They could only recover after resting in Zhu Wu's essence blood for a few months. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, the great Magi wouldn't use their original true bodies. According to Gohan's original estimation, Kwafu shouldn't use his original true body at this time. Even though Ji Hao had turned Kwafu's hand into a mess, it was only a hand. Even to human beings, losing a hand was nothing more than a disability and couldn't cause any fatal harm. However, to the Wu people, their bodies could regenerate. As long as they cultivated for a long enough time, the hand that was cut off could automatically grow back. Therefore, to Kwafu, the current situation wasn't absolutely necessary, and Kwafu shouldn't use his original true body. Sadly, Gohan still didn't understand the Wu people. He calculated the responses of the Wu people with rationality and profit, but he didn't consider the nature of the Wu people. The Wu people were naturally violent. They could hide their anger from even the smallest things, but once they were enraged, they would lose their minds completely and turn into monsters who knew nothing but fighting. Every tribe had different personalities. Some tribes were more rational, such as the Dijiang tribe, the Xianming tribe, the Huda tribe, and so on. Some tribes were more violent, such as the Zhu Rong tribe, the Gonggong tribe, and this Qiangliang tribe. Although the attack launched by Gohan to Kwafu's hand didn't cause a fatal injury, the pain caused to Kwafu was fatal. Such a great pain and the bad temper of Kwafu naturally made Kwafu furious. The anger occupied all of Kwafu's mind. Therefore, he didn't care about the side effects of the original true body anymore. As long as he could kill this human being, Kwafu would do anything. Once Kwafu began to transform into his origin true body, his entire body would naturally undergo great changes, and his wounds would automatically heal as well. The trans father's true body was a tree spirit. His body had turned into a peach tree trunk that was dozens of meters thick. His legs had turned into densely packed roots, while his hands had turned into two 10-meter thick branches that were covered in emerald green branches. At the moment, the part below Gohan's knees was rooted in the branches, while Gohan's body was straight out, looking just like a branch on a tree trunk. Gohan tried to free his feet, but his feet seemed to be trapped in a swamp. Without the sword essence, Gohan's feet were only slightly stronger than ordinary human beings. How could he free his feet from the branches? Gohan attempted to dig out the branches with the Qingpin sword, but when the Qingpin sword pierced into the branches, it felt like a sword piercing into sand. Although it was very easy to get in and cut out, the cut made by the Qingpin sword healed automatically. However, the wounds made by Gohan's feet healed automatically. No matter how fast Gohan cut the wounds would heal within a moment. After a few sword attacks, Gohan's feet remained motionless, trapped in Kwafu's real body. "Human, I will strangle you to death." Seeing that Gohan was trapped in his claws, Kwafu laughed crazily. The branches around Gohan suddenly began to grow rapidly, turning into tough and soft vines. They were like linen wrapping a mummy, wrapping around Gohan's body. Finally, Gohan was completely wrapped up like a mummy, dying. When Gohan was completely wrapped, the The vines began to contract and tighten like a giant snake. They wanted to strangle Gahan to death, like Kwafu said. At this time, Gahan experienced the pain Kwafu felt. He felt that every inch of his skin and internal organs began to squeeze into his body. He could clearly hear the sound of bones breaking in his body, bringing bursts of heart-wrenching pain. But at this time, the pain was nothing to Gahan. Gahan needed to think about how to survive in this situation. Unfortunately, even Gahan could not think of a good way to fight back in such a situation. Gahan was like a small raccoon crispy noodle snack that was about to be crushed into a bag of bread by someone. Gahan! Liu Ling let out a miserable cry. She seemed to have seen the scene of Gahan being crushed into a bag of instant noodles by Kwafu. Liu Ling did not have time to hesitate. She took off Gahan's clothes and pulled out her pendant. It seemed that Liu Ling had made up her mind to use her trump card. She did not know what this pendant could do. Unfortunately, Liu Ling did not seem to have reached the time to use this trump card. Because a black spear shaft appeared beside Liu Ling. "Get out of my way." Liu Ling heard the goo black tortoise's voice. But compared to the previous goo black tortoise, the current goo black tortoise's voice was extremely cold like an ice beauty. "Miss Black Tortoise, you." Liu Ling turned her head and was instantly stunned. This was because she realized that the current goo black tortoise was completely different from the previous goo black tortoise. Although the faces of the two goo black tortoises did not change, the goo black tortoise's clothes and hair accessories had completely changed. The original goo black tortoise was dressed neatly. He wore a sword shirt and a pair of casual pants. At a glance, one could tell that he was dressed neatly for a sword wielder. But now, the goo black tortoise was dressed neatly. He wore a dark red military uniform and a black lace miniskirt with white edges. His pair of slender and perfect legs were covered with a pair of snow-white stockings. He was holding a double-barreled breech-loading gun in his hand. Yes, that's right. The goo black tortoise had changed into the clothes he wore when he was being chased by the angels outside the city. "You're not human." At a glance, Liu Ling saw a circle of dimensional energy surrounding the goo black tortoise's body. This was a characteristic that only Yuan Ko had. Could it be that the goo black tortoise was Yuan Ko? But what about the goo black tortoise's sword lady? Liu Ling felt that her brain was about to explode. "We'll talk about this later. Get out of my way now. Don't get in the way of me saving my father." The goo black tortoise roared at Liu Ling. Then, he directly pushed Liu Ling's body. Without the sword element, Liu Ling was directly pushed a few meters away by the goo black tortoise and directly hit a tree trunk. "Father." When Liu Ling heard the goo black tortoise's title, she felt even more deafened. But she suddenly remembered that day in Yuzhong City when Guhan was in her sea of consciousness in the scene called Loving Father's Shop. It seemed that there, she was also very happy to call Guhan father. This Guhan is really a pervert. He actually taught his sister to say such words. Liu Ling immediately scolded Gahan in her heart. Bang! Just as Liu Ling was scolding, she heard the roar of a gun. When Liu Ling turned her head, she saw the gun barrel in the goo black tortoise's hand emitting smoke. The vine whip that firmly bound Gahan had a dark hole in it. Chapter 861. The body of the witch tribe's origin true body, which could still quickly recover under the attack of the poor sword, was actually left with a pitch-black bullet mark after being attacked by the Gu Xuanwu's breech gun. Moreover, these bullet marks did not show any signs of recovering. "Who are you? How can you injure my origin true body?" After being hit by this shot, the vine whip that was turning Gahan into instant noodle dregs suddenly stopped. Kwafu turned his head and asked the goo black tortoise in doubt. "Kwafu, have you forgotten about the dragon tooth bullets?" The goo black tortoise pulled out 2 golden bullets from God knows where. The bullets were slightly curved, looking like dragon teeth, and loaded them into his gun. "Dragon tooth bullets. You're someone from Glory City." Kwafu seemed to have thought of something and uncontrollably took a step back. Obviously, he was afraid of the 3 words, Glory City. "No, Glory City has already signed a contract with us, the Wu people. We won't offend each other. Why do you have to make a move against me? You're breaking the contract between us. Kwafu's brain is indeed not too bright. Only now did he remember that the Wu people have signed a contract with Glory City. Glory City is Glory City. I've already broken free from the shackles of Glory City. Don't think of using any contract to restrict me. The Goo Black Tortoise clenched his teeth and said, Kwafu, let go of that person and we'll leave immediately. We definitely won't spoil the good things of the Wu people. You can't. Kwafu's voice suddenly turned furious. This person has made me, Kwafu, in so much pain that I wish I was dead. Only with his death can I repay Kwafu's pain. Finishing his words, the vine whip that was trapping Gohan started to tighten again. It seems that Kwafu has vowed to turn Gohan into crispy noodle dregs. Damn it, you're the one who forced me to do this. The Gu Xuanwu's breech-loading rifle fired 2 dragon tooth bullets consecutively, both of which struck the vine whips that were binding Gohan. However, these dragon teeth bullets seemed to have a strong restraining effect on the terrifying recovery ability of Wu people's original true form. After being hit by 2 dragon teeth bullets in a row, the taut vine whip immediately loosened. Otherwise, the broken vines would continuously fall, allowing Gohan, who was almost unable to breathe, to take a good breath. Woman of Glory City, you're playing with fire. Seeing his vines shattering, Kwafu felt heartache. Why does he look so distressed? Liu Ling couldn't help but ask when she saw Kwafu's expression. The reason why an Origin True Body is so powerful is because the entire Origin True Body is formed from its most precious essence blood. My dragon teeth bullets are specially made. The poison on it can contaminate the essence blood of Wu people. Therefore, the place that my dragon teeth bullets hit will not only lose the powerful recovery ability, it will also be permanently contaminated. It's equivalent to the Wu people losing this part of their essence blood forever. This is truly forever lost. Even if they revive after death, the essence blood will also disappear forever. One of my dragon teeth bullets can contaminate the essence blood of an intermediate Magus rank Wu people. It's equivalent to them losing an intermediate Magus rank Wu people forever. Of course, he would feel heartache. The Gu Xuanwu explained with a cold smile. What? This dragon teeth bullet actually has such a powerful effect. Hearing the Gu Xuanwu's explanation, Liu Ling was shocked. At the same time, she felt a greedy desire for these dragon teeth bullets. These dragon teeth bullets could permanently contaminate the essence blood of Wu people, making the Wu people lose the ability to revive. The reason why the Wu people could continuously attack the areas guarded by human beings for hundreds of years was that these Wu people could revive through their essence blood, even if they died. 18 years later, they would be as strong as before, and it was impossible to kill all of them. Otherwise, based on the number of Wu people killed by human beings over the past hundreds of years, all the Wu people in Shanghai Pass would have died over 100 times. However, if they could master the technique of making dragon teeth bullets, the Wu people in Shanghai Pass would be completely wiped out. A large number of human sword bearers wouldn't have to be sacrificed on this land, and they would be able to focus more on fighting against the Wu people. In this way, the future of human beings would undoubtedly be much easier. If human beings could master this dragon teeth bullet earlier, those sword bearers who died just now wouldn't have to die. After the battle, I have to find out how to make dragon teeth bullets. Liu Ling silently thought to herself. At the same time, the battle between the Gu Black Tortoise and Kwafu was extremely intense. Although the battle was very intense, the process was relatively simple. The Gu Black Tortoise just had to continuously reload and shoot. The steps of reloading and firing were repeated. At this moment, the Gu Black Tortoise's amazing spear technique was reflected. To be honest, the Gu Black Tortoise's talent in swordsmanship wasn't very high. After learning the chaos sword technique for so long, it wasn't even 1/10 of Gohan's. However, the Gu Black Tortoise's talent in shooting was completely different. It was simply terrifying. In the beginning, Kwafu wanted to use his vine whips and Peach wood tentacles to counterattack. He wanted to tie up the goo black tortoise and Liunian Ling like mummies, just like how he dealt with Gahan. However, the goo black tortoise's spear technique taught Kwafu the truth of being a Wu people. The dragon teeth bullet of the breech loading gun wasn't a bullet in the traditional sense. It was more similar to a shotgun. When the dragon teeth bullet was fired, it would split in the air and turn into dozens of small dragon teeth bullets, shooting across the entire area. A normal gunner would at most be able to perfectly control the entire area where the dragon fang would land. However, when the dragon teeth bullet fell into the hands of the goo black tortoise, it completely changed. Those dozens of small dragon teeth bullets that were scattered could actually be shot at different targets, according to the subjective thoughts of the goo black tortoise. Kwafu gathered dozens of tentacles and covered the sky as he tried to grab the goo black tortoise and Liunian Ling. However, the goo black tortoise had only said 4 dragon teeth bullets before all the tentacles were hit by the bullets. The tentacles fell to the ground and turned into a pile of broken wood. If it could be slowed down by 1,000 times, one would see that the moment the dragon tooth bullets split up, all the smaller dragon tooth bullets darted towards different directions and accurately hit on different tentacles as if they had their own lives, turning Kwafu's wave of attacks into nothingness. Also, a great amount of Kwafu's spirit blood was destroyed, which meant that the Changliang clan had lost around 10 intermediate magi warriors. Pop! The goo black tortoise quickly removed the 2 empty shells from a gun and replaced them with 2 new dragon teeth bullets, then continued to aim at Kwafu's body. Kwafu, I still have over 100 dragon teeth bullets. If you don't let him go, I will put all of them into your body. I will make your Changliang clan lose 1,000 intermediate magi, threatened the goo black tortoise loudly. The spirit blood of a senior magus was equal to the spirit blood of 2,000 intermediate magi. Although the goo black tortoise's 100 dragon teeth bullets couldn't contaminate all of Kwafu's spirit blood and kill Kwafu, it was impossible. If Kwafu was willing to use his own spirit blood to consume the goo black tortoise's dragon teeth bullets, even if the goo black tortoise really had 100 dragon teeth bullets, Kwafu would still be able to kill the goo black tortoise. However, in this case, Kwafu would have to pay the price of losing 1,000 intermediate magi of the Wu people forever, which was a price that Kwafu could never afford. Impossible. Don't lie to me. How could you possibly have 100 dragon teeth bullets on you? Kwafu firmly said, I know the production of your dragon teeth bullets. You can only make 1 dragon teeth bullet a year. Your glory city can only make a total of 180 dragon teeth bullets. You're just a small dragon, rank Yuan Ko. It's impossible for you to have more than half of your glory city's dragon teeth bullets. The goo black tortoise took a deep breath and said, 1,000 50 bells. What? What did you say? Hearing the name 1,000 50 bells, Kwafu couldn't help taking a step back. She's my mother. I'm the daughter of the 1,000 50 bells. This gun was given to me by my mother. You still can't recognize it? After saying that, the Gu Xuanwu fired 2 more shots, continuing to strike the vine whips that were binding the cold, smashing a large portion of the vine whips. Parts of Gohan's body could already be seen through the gaps of the vines. Magic bullet gun. This is indeed the magic bullet gun. Kwafu finally focused his attention on the gun in the goo black tortoise's hands, then shouted out the name of the gun in panic. So the name of this gun is the magic bullet gun. Good. I'll let it go. But you have to promise me that you won't use the dragon teeth bullets to attack me again. Facing the threat of the dragon teeth bullets, even if Kwafu lost his rationality due to rage, he had no choice but to return to his senses and let Gahan out. His Changliang tribe only has a total of less than 3,000 intermediate shamans. If these 100 dragon teeth bullets hit him, it would be equivalent to losing 1/3 of the intermediate shamans in the Changliang tribe. This is something that the patriarch of the Changliang tribe can't accept. I promise. I can promise in the name of my mother, the goo black tortoise solemnly said. Oof. Kwafu snorted coldly. All the vines that were binding Gahan were loosened, then the branches that were binding Gahan's feet cracked open. Without the support of the branches, Gahan directly fell to the ground, making a muffled sound like a sandbag falling on the ground. This meant that almost all of the bones in Guhan's body were broken. If the goo black tortoise showed up a bit later, Gahan might really die on the spot. Miss Ling, please bring him to me. Although Kwafu had already let Gahan go, the goo black tortoise still didn't dare to let her guard down. She pointed the gun at Kwafu's body. Therefore, she could only ask Lian Ling to pick up Gahan, who had fallen to the ground. Okay, although it was very dangerous to leave the goo black tortoise's side, and although Kwafu could go back on his word at any time, Lian Ling still walked out without hesitation and arrived next to Gahan. Seeing the dying Gahan wrapped in flesh and bones, Lian Ling's heart ached so much that tears flowed out. She held Gahan in her arms and ran back to the goo black tortoise's side. I'm leaving. You better have the guts to run to the battlefield on planet Suzaku. Kwafu let out a snort, and his essence true body began to retreat. He returned to his giant form and left the battlefield. He headed toward a direction that wasn't the battlefield on planet Suzaku, or the direction Lian Ling came from. At this moment, Kwafu seemed a little weak. This was an inevitable effect of withdrawing his origin true body. Therefore, he had to return to the Grand Shaman's blood essence so that he could recover his lost strength through the Grand Shaman's blood essence. As for where Zhu Wu's essence blood was, that had always been the biggest secret of the Wu people. After hundreds of years of entanglement, humanity still hadn't found the answer to this question. How is Gahan? Seeing that Kwafu had disappeared, the goo black tortoise finally relaxed and began to worry about Gahan's situation. Very bad. Lian Ling's face was covered in tears. He is about to die. Chapter 862. Not too long ago, Gahan had also suffered such a serious injury. That was back in the Mei Ling mountain range. Just a single hit from the Medusa's snake head was enough to shatter all the bones in Gahan's body. It was exactly the same as the current situation. But fortunately, Gahan was only left with a bit of consciousness after being injured. But now, Gahan could really maintain his consciousness with his own eyes. Medical bay. There must be a medical bay, Lian Ling said excitedly. She immediately took out her dimensional pocket and wanted to take out her medical bay. But when Lian Ling placed her hand on her dimensional pocket, Lian Ling suddenly remembered that she had already lost her sword essence. She had no ability to open the dimensional pocket, let alone take out the medical bay. Miss Xuanwu, you still have your sword essence, right? Lian Ling immediately recalled the scene of Gu Xuanwu fighting with the Tai sword. She hurriedly grabbed Gu Xuanwu's hand and said, "Hurry up and open your dimensional pocket. Take out your medical bay." "It's useless. I can't open my dimensional pocket." Gu Xuanwu calmly wiped the devil bullet gun in his hand. "You should have noticed. I'm no longer a human. I'm just the Yuan Ko that you guys are talking about. What are you? How can you?" Lian Ling suddenly recalled the strange thing about Gu Xuanwu. Just as she was about to ask about it, she suddenly heard Guhan scream. "What's wrong with you? Don't scare me." Lian Ling immediately focused all her attention on Gahan. "Ling, please, I don't care about Gu Xuanwu or matters. I promise it won't do anything harmful to us humans. Otherwise, I'll be the first to kill her with my own hands." Gahan used all his strength to finish his sentence. Then, his body suddenly turned blood red. A large amount of blood gushed out through Gahan's skin. He looked like a sponge that was full of water. "No, I can't let this go on. I have to think of a way to save you. Otherwise, you'll really die." Lian Ling saw this situation and knew that Gahan's body had probably been stirred into a mess. If it was an ordinary person, the two of them would have already died. Yet, Gahan was still able to maintain his consciousness. It was truly inconceivable. How strong did Gahan's willpower and how much pain did he have to endure to achieve this? "Don't move. I'll save you now." Lian Ling tore her collar for the third time. She didn't care about the two lively white rabbits and tore off the pendant in front of her chest. What was the use of this pendant? Previously, Lian Ling wanted to use it to deal with Kwafu. This meant that it had a powerful destructive ability. But now, Liu Ling wanted to use it to save Gahan. Could it be that it also had medical abilities? What are you doing? When Guhan saw the two shining white rabbits, a hint of shyness appeared on her face, and she hurriedly said intermittently, "Clothes. Inside my clothes. Take them out. Where are you hiding your clothes?" But how can I take them out? Liu Ling was stunned. Because Gahan had taken off his shirt for Liu Ling, Gahan was now in a shirtless state. There was no shirt on his upper body, only a pair of pants. If Gahan had something hidden in his clothes, it must be in his pants. But the problem was that Gahan's pants didn't have any pockets. Could it be that Gahan had hidden something in? Now is not the time to be shy. Put your hand inside my boxers. Sure enough, it was just as Liu Ling had guessed. Guhan, the shameless villain, had hidden something in his boxers. Liu Ling had to put her hand in Guhan's boxers to get the thing that Gahan had said. This also meant that Liu Ling and Guhan would inevitably have intimate contact. Liu Ling was still a pure girl. How could she accept this kind of thing in a short time? Therefore, the scene was in a deadlock. Gu Xuanwu couldn't stand it anymore. She pushed Liu Ling away. She shook her hands and boldly said, "Let me do it." "No, no." Gahan and Liu Ling shouted at the same time. The reason why Gahan didn't let Gu Xuanwu do it was because Gu Xuanwu was very likely to be his daughter. As a father, how could he let his daughter come into contact with his thing? However, it was hard to say why Liu Ling stopped Gu Xuanwu. Could it be that Liu Ling wanted to do it herself? Cough, cough. That Kwafu might come at any time. There might be other Wu people hiding in the surroundings. You must protect us. Let me look for the thing. Sure enough, Liu Ling wanted to do it herself. Then hurry up. He's about to die. Gu Xuanwu rolled his eyes at Liu Ling. Then, according to Liu Ling's words, he held his magic bullet gun and vigilantly observed the surroundings. Got it. Liu Ling took a deep breath. Then she put her hand on Gahan's belt and squeezed, pulled. What are you doing? What are you dawdling for? Seeing that Liu Ling didn't move, Gu Xuanwu asked anxiously, How do I undo this belt? After Liu Ling finished speaking, she was embarrassed to death. As a pure girl, she really didn't know how to undo a man's belt. Just like when an innocent young man undid a girl's bra for the first time, he also couldn't do anything about the ring on the other party's back. Isn't that easy? Gu Xuanwu's big words had just left his mouth when his tongue got stuck. After babbling for a long time, he said without any spirit, "You just have to try a few more times. There's a small ring on the side. Pull it up, and it'll be fine." Poor Gahan, he was about to die, but he still had to take the time to teach a girl how to undo his belt. This was really a sad thing. Fortunately, Liu Ling wasn't stupid. After getting Gahan's hint, she smoothly undid Gahan's belt. As a man's most open absolute territory, he opened his arms to Liu Ling for the first time. Fight! Liu Ling gritted her teeth, closed her eyes, and made up her mind. She put her hand into Gahan's pants and directly grabbed a soft worm. Is it this thing? Liu Ling pulled hard, trying to pull this thing out, but found that it seemed to be connected to the flesh. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't pull it out. Fortunately, the blood supply system in Gahan's body was a mess, and the huge pain completely suppressed the little bit of pleasure. Otherwise, Liu Ling would have to experience the legendary bigger, longer, and harder story. Wrong one, change one. Gahan's expression was very calm, but Liu Ling let go of the thing in her hand and continued to go deeper inside. Then she found a small pocket at the bottom of the flat pants, and this small pocket seemed to contain a cylindrical object similar to a lipstick. Emperor's blood. Why do you have this thing? Liu Ling pulled the cylindrical object out and found that it was a small bottle filled with golden blood. The knowledgeable Liu Ling naturally recognized at a glance that it contained Emperor's blood. Moreover, Liu Ling also found that there was a small symbol engraved on the bottle. This symbol was the Liu clan's emblem. In other words, this bottle of Emperor's blood belonged to the Liu clan. This was given to me by your grandfather. I'll explain the specifics to you later. Feed me the Emperor's blood first, or I'll really die." This sentence seemed to have exhausted the last of Gohan's strength. After saying this, Gohan lay on the ground without moving, looking like a dead man. Although she was puzzled, only the Emperor's blood could save Gohan now. Before there were medical pods, the Emperor's blood was a life-saving divine item for swordbearers. Just one drop of Emperor's blood could regenerate limbs, and no matter how serious an injury was, just 5 drops of Emperor's blood would be enough to heal, of course. The Emperor's blood was useless to Jindy. This small bottle was filled with 50 cubic centimeters of Emperor's blood, which was equivalent to 1,000 drops of Emperor's blood. It was definitely enough to save Gohan's life. This small bottle was specially made. There was no cap on it, only an extremely small hole. After opening it, one only needed to slightly press the rubber at the top of the bottle to force out a drop of Emperor's blood. The reason it was designed like this was to maximize the value of the Emperor's blood. Not everyone could be like Gohan, pouring 10,000 cubic centimeters of Emperor's blood directly into the heaven and earth furnace. Without saying anything, Lin Yinling directly twisted the small switch on the test tube, opened Gohan's mouth, and dripped 5 drops of Emperor's blood into Gohan's mouth. What did Emperor's blood taste like? It was an indescribable taste. It felt like hundreds of smelly socks had been boiled in indigo wood root solution, and the final concentrated taste was the taste of the soup. In any case, unless it was absolutely necessary, Gohan definitely did not want to taste this again. On the other hand, the instant the sovereign blood entered Gohan's mouth, Gohan's complexion improved at a rate visible to the naked eye, and some color returned to his face. The blood that continuously seeped out of his skin finally stopped, but that was as far as it went. 5 drops of Emperor's blood seemed to only have this much effect. This bit of Emperor's blood was far from enough for Gohan. Chapter 863. That's impossible. For a famed sword-rank swordsman, 5 drops of sovereign blood is enough to heal any injury. Lin Yinling said in confusion when she saw that Gohan's condition had only improved slightly. Do you think his battle prowess is that of an ordinary famed sword-rank swordsman? The Black Tortoise, who was on guard, suddenly said. When Lin Yinling heard this, she immediately felt that it made sense. Gohan was a monster. In terms of battle prowess, he was already a solid spirit sword-rank swordsman. Indeed, she could not treat him as an ordinary famed sword-rank swordsman. Then give him another 5 drops? Lin Yinling hesitated for a moment, then dripped 5 drops of sovereign blood into Gohan's mouth. The effects were very obvious. Gohan's injuries had greatly recovered, and his consciousness had also recovered. His skin had also returned to normal. However, if one were to touch Gohan's body, they would find that his bones were still broken. Another 5 drops. Another 5 drops. Another 5 drops. Lin Yinling was like a stingy little woman, pouring 5 drops into Gohan's mouth, afraid that a drop of sovereign blood would go to waste. This not only made the Black Tortoise unable to continue watching, but even Gohan, who had regained consciousness, felt uncomfortable all over. Give me 50 drops each time. Gohan, who had regained consciousness, said to Lin Yinling, 50 drops. Lin Yinling revealed an exaggerated expression. Do you know how hard it is for our Liunying clan to store this sovereign blood? Even when I was injured when I was young, my father was only willing to give me half a drop. You want 50 drops each time? What if it goes to waste? This is my sovereign blood. I can waste it if I want. It's none of your business. Gohan's temper seemed to have flared up, and he said in a bad mood. What? What did you say? Lin Yinling's face immediately turned red. She grabbed the sovereign blood with force, and the entire glass bottle was crushed. Then, all of the sovereign blood dripped into Gohan's mouth. Drink, drink. I'll give you everything. Are you satisfied now? Lin Yinling was like an angry daughter-in-law. When she was angry, she would even make small movements, causing Gohan to feel quite awkward. His words just then had indeed been a bit overboard. Lin Yinling was actually just trying to help him save some sovereign blood, but he felt like he had bitten Lu Dongbin. No matter what, when the entire bottle of sovereign blood entered Gohan's mouth, the healing effects were immediate. A bottle of sovereign blood flowed directly into Guhan's heart, forming a sovereign blood pill that looked like a Maiden. Golden threads were emitted from the water pellet, and the flesh that came into contact with the golden threads instantly began to undergo astonishing changes. Guhan's body, which was like a piece of crispy bread, instantly began to swell. The bone fragments that had been smashed into glass shards were pieced back together as if they had been placed upside down. Miraculously, they fused together and returned to their original perfect bones. His internal organs, which had also been turned into minced meat, also gathered back together and returned to their original positions. Naturally, his blood vessels and veins had all recovered. In just 3 short seconds, with the powerful recovery abilities of the sovereign blood, Guhan's body had completely recovered. At this moment, the sovereign blood pill at Guhan's heart had been used up by about 1/3. There were still 2/3 of the sovereign blood pill condensed at Guhan's heart, silently floating there. Every time Guhan's blood flowed past his heart, it would pass through the sovereign blood pill. This caused Guhan's blood to be dyed with a thin layer of gold, as if his blood had been dyed with gold. 1/3 of the 50 cubic centimeters has been used up, which is about 17 cubic centimeters, which is equivalent to 340 drops. Guhan silently calculated the amount of sovereign blood he had used to repair his body and came up with this shocking figure. To completely repair a body below famed sword rank requires 5 drops of sovereign blood. To completely repair a body at spirit sword rank requires 100 drops of sovereign blood. To completely repair a body at immortal sword rank requires 500 drops of sovereign blood. Could it be that my body is already equivalent to the body of an immortal sword rank sword wielder? As Guhan pondered over this additional conclusion, he could not help but feel astonished. The consumption of 340 drops of sovereign blood was something that only immortal sword rank sword wielder would use. Before and after famed sword rank, the body of a sword wielder was still the body of a normal person. At most, it would be slightly strengthened, so it did not require much sovereign blood. After becoming a spirit sword rank sword wielder, the human body would be greatly strengthened. Even if they were separated from the sword lady, they would not be like Guhan, who had been casually crushed into a pile of bones by Kwafu. Repairing such a body naturally required a lot of sovereign blood, and when the sword wielder became Jindi, the body would be greatly strengthened. Jindi's blood itself could heal the injuries of an immortal sword rank sword wielder, so one could only imagine how strong Jindi's own body was. I wonder if this sovereign blood pill is good or bad in my body. Seeing this sovereign blood pill floating in his heart, Guhan could not tell whether it was good or bad, because this was something that had never happened before. Let's go. After recovering, Guhan stood up again and shook his body. He found that his whole body was filled with power, and he was much stronger than before he was injured. Should I go with you? Gu Xuanwu suddenly asked, her face filled with hesitation. Seeing the dimensional energy around Gu Xuanwu's body, as long as any sword wielder saw Gu Xuanwu, they would know that she was Yuan Ko. That way, Gu Xuanwu might even die under the sword of her own people. So it was naturally impossible for Gu Xuanwu to appear in front of others in the form of Yuan Ko. Can you change back to your human form? Guhan asked with a frown. No, Gu Xuanwu shook her head. Every time I change my form, I need at least 3 days. During these 3 days, I can only maintain the form of Yuan Ko. This is a bit troublesome. Guhan rubbed his chin and thought for a while. He suddenly thought of something and asked Gu Xuanwu, "What about the others? What about the sword wielder that followed us?" "That's right, and the sword wielder that followed me." Hearing Guhan's question, Liu Yinling suddenly slapped her thigh. She had forgotten about her sword wielder. When I caught up to Miss Ling, I had already asked Miss Ling's sword wielder to rendezvous with our people. Then I told them to find a place to hide. As for their current situation, I don't know. Gu Xuanwu coldly said, "Come, let's go find those sword wielder first." Guhan said, "Sigh, I wonder where little brother Guhan and his sister went. Why haven't they returned yet? They couldn't have encountered some danger, right?" In the ruins of a dilapidated building, a few sword wielder whispered, Didn't you notice? Just now, at the place where little brother Gahan went, a huge monster seemed to have appeared. I could faintly hear the sounds of various battles. I suspect that little brother Gahan and his sister must have encountered some powerful Wu people. This sword wielder guessed correctly. Then aren't the two of them in danger? Another sword wielder said worriedly. I don't know if they're in danger or not. Anyway, we're in danger. Now that everyone who can fight is gone, there only is old and weak and a bunch of seriously injured people left. At this time, I'm afraid that only 2 or 3 intermediate sorcerers can kill us all. This sword wielder's face showed some fear. In my opinion, we can't sit here anymore. It's too dangerous to stay in one place without moving. We have to leave this place and find a more hidden place. What nonsense are you talking about? As soon as the sword wielder finished his words, Leslie Dracula shouted, Guhan repeatedly told us to wait for him here. We have to believe in him. He will definitely come to us. Little sister, this may not necessarily be true. A sword wielder from Liu Yinling's team, who had lost half of his leg, immediately retorted, You may not have seen it, but I saw it clearly. The huge great sorcerer that appeared at the end is the great sorcerer of Changliang clan, Quafu. That's the equivalent of a spirit sword level sword wielder, and little brother Gahan doesn't have his sword element, so they're definitely not Quafu's opponent. Maybe they're already dead. Why are we still waiting for him here? I say we should leave as soon as possible, otherwise that Quafu might come back and kill us all. That's right. This brother is right. We can't wait for death here. That's right. We have to leave here. All the sword wielder in the ruins suddenly quarreled, and all of them clamored to leave the ruins. This caused Leslie Dracula, who was trying to control the whole team, to completely collapse. When Gahan was here, he could still use his own strength to restrain these sword wielder, but now that Gahan had left, only Leslie Dracula, who had the halo of her family, was left. In the eyes of these sword wielder, she was just an ordinary person. Seeing that these sword wielder were about to leave, 2 figures suddenly flashed into the ruins. Who wants to leave? Who can leave now? I won't stop him. Guhan's indifferent and angry voice made the entire ruins instantly quiet down. Those sword wielder who followed Gahan smiled awkwardly. How would they dare to say anything about leaving? They lowered their heads and didn't even dare to look at Gahan's eyes. As for those sword wielder who didn't follow Gahan, they also didn't dare to look at Gahan, because behind Gahan, Liu Yinling was also looking at them with a sullen face. When did the two of them get together? Several sword wielder muttered. The combination of Gahan and Liu Yinling had completely suppressed the thoughts of these sword wielder, making them not dare to say a word. Chapter 864. Strange Gahan, where did your cousin go? The only one who dared to talk to Gahan was Leslie Dracula. She had been trying to maintain the rules set by Gahan. At this time, Leslie Dracula found that Gahan's cousin, Gu Xuanwu, did not come back with Gahan. Don't worry, she's just standing guard outside, Gahan said faintly. Leslie Dracula did not suspect anything. Mr. Gahan, Miss Ling, how are you? I heard that you met the great wizard Quafu. Hearing Leslie Dracula's question, the other sword-bearers also pricked up their ears. They were also very curious. What happened to Quafu? Did Gahan and Liu Yinling fight with Quafu? Yes, Gahan grunted, but did not say the result of the battle. Then what? Why didn't you say anything? This made the sword-bearers who were silently eavesdropping on the conversation feel uncomfortable. They could not wait to stand up and grab Gahan's collar to ask him what the result was. Unfortunately, they did not have the guts to do so. Sister Ling, this bastard is keeping me guessing. You tell me, what happened after you met that Quafu? Leslie Dracula left Gahan decisively, hugged Liu Yinling's arm, and asked. We were neck and neck. Liu Yinling hesitated for a moment and said, Quafu couldn't beat us, and we couldn't kill him. So in the end, he just left. Telling such a lie made Liu Yinling very uncomfortable. But she promised Gahan not to tell the truth, so she could only use this ambiguous answer to cover it up. What do you mean he can't beat you? You can't kill him either. Leslie Dracula was very dissatisfied with this explanation. She continued to pull Liu Ling's arm and begged, "All right, we don't have time to talk to you." Gohan pulled Leslie Dracula away and said solemnly, "After much consideration, Ling and I have decided that it's impossible to bring all of you to the sun in one piece. Many people will have to be sacrificed in the process. That's why I've decided that only my sister, Ling, and I will be heading to the solar star. All of you will wait here." "What? No, absolutely not. You must at least bring me along." Hearing Gohan's words, Leslie Dracula shook her head like a rattle drum, expressing that she must go to the front line of the sun with Gohan, and Liu Ling faced with Leslie Dracula's request. Gohan rejected it very straightforwardly. Liu Ling also stood on the same side as Gohan. So Leslie Dracula completely cut off the possibility of following Gohan and Liu Ling. However, Leslie Dracula was the only one who insisted on going with Gohan. The others all kept their mouths shut and did not say a word. Obviously, they had tacitly agreed with Gohan's decision, or rather, they agreed with Gohan's decision. This was because they all knew that following Gohan to the battlefield was simply asking for death. Moreover, their deaths would be worthless, so they might as well wait here. If the Zhou Star Battle Formation was really broken, they would be able to recover their sword essence after losing the suppression of the star's power. Then, they might even be able to escape back to Yinjing City. Seeing that no one else objected, Gohan nodded and prepared to leave with Liu Ling wait. A swordsman suddenly stood up. "What will we do if you leave? We're just ordinary people now. 1 or 2 Wu people can kill us all. Shouldn't you leave one person behind to protect us?" These swordsmen were too much. Not only did they not go to the rescue because they wanted to sign up, but they also wanted Gohan or Liu Ling to stay behind to protect them. "You will be very safe here. You don't need our protection." Gohan stopped and said with his back facing everyone, "There are Wu people everywhere. The swordsman wanted to say more, but he was interrupted by Gohan. "I promise that as long as you stay in the ruins and don't go out, no Wu people can hurt you. However, if you leave the ruins, whatever happens to you will have nothing to do with me. Think about it yourselves." After saying that, Gohan left the ruins with Liu Ling. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared in front of everyone. "You really don't need to worry about leaving them there. What if Wu people really find them?" Liu Ling asked curiously on the way to the sun. "It's okay. Gu Xinwu is actually staying there." Gohan sighed. "I asked her to hide in the tree crown next to the ruins. Unless there are senior Magi-level Wu people, any other Wu people who want to approach the ruins will be killed by Gu Xianwu's magic bullet gun. And Wu people have really put all their battle potential into the battlefield. Otherwise, how can we not see a single Wu people alive after walking for half an hour? So, I suspect that no Wu people will approach the ruins until the end of the battle. Gu Xianwu alone is enough to deal with all the situations. What if senior Magi-level Wu people really go there?" Liu Ling seemed to want to know the answer. "Then they will die." Gohan shrugged. "I'm afraid more than 4,000 swordsmen have died in Shanghai Pass today. Another 30 swordsmen won't be a big deal. They can only blame themselves for being unlucky. That's right. It's their bad luck. It has nothing to do with us." Liu Ling sighed. "That's right. There's less than an hour left until noon. I think the Suzaku planet can't hold on much longer, but if we only rely on our 2 legs, I'm afraid we won't be able to get there in another 3 hours. You said you have a way to get there on time. What is it?" Gohan asked in confusion. On the way, Gohan found that it was almost impossible to get to the Suzaku Imperial planet before noon. However, Liu Ling promised him that she had a way to do it. "Did you know? I'm the 6th descendant of the Lun Yin family to come here." A mysterious smile appeared on Fleeting Time's face. "Before me, there were 5 ancestors who came here. My father was one of them. When I was young, my father loved to tell me stories of his battles. He told me that the most exciting thing in Shanghai Pass was racing, and it was a maglev motorcycle. The feeling of racing in the lush forest that is hundreds of meters high is the best. I get it now. Your father must have left a maglev motorcycle nearby," Gohan said dryly. Liu Ling's face darkened. Why are you like this? It's not fun at all. 5 minutes later, Liu Ling and Guhan arrived at the ruins of a small town. Liu Ling dashed into the town and began muttering under her breath, two of the thickest pine trees. Two of the thickest pine trees. It seemed that the maglev motorcycle was hidden between the two pine trees. But to Liu Ling's surprise, she could not find a single pine tree in the town, let alone two of the thickest pine trees. How can this be? Did my father lie to me? Liu Ling was depressed. She could not believe that her father had lied to her. No, your father did not lie to you. Gohan surveyed his surroundings. Didn't you notice that there are no pine trees in the town? There are no other trees, either. What do you mean? Liu Ling was puzzled. I heard that the Candle Dragon tribe is good at using poison. Their poison can make all the soil that it touches unable to grow any plants for 100 years. At this point, Guhan paused. Your father shouldn't be more than 100 years old. That's why there are no plants growing here. You're saying that the Candle Dragon has spread poison all over the place? Liu Ling finally understood what Yi Si meant. They didn't purposely spread the poison here. I think there must have been an intense battle here. Therefore, the entire battlefield is filled with the poison of the Candle Dragon tribe. Guhan glanced at a house that was violently destroyed and said calmly, What should we do? How are we going to find the maglev motorcycle without the pine trees? Ever since she met up with Guhan, Liu Ling had been acting the same as before. She left all the work related to thinking to Guhan. She only needed to ask Guhan if she had any questions. Didn't you notice that there are many circles made of bricks in the town? With Guhan's hint, Liu Ling found many small circles made of bricks on both sides of the road. The sizes of the circles were not fixed. The smaller ones were only about 1 meter in diameter, while the bigger ones were 5 to 6 meters in diameter. I understand now. These circles are used to surround the pine trees. We just need to find the two largest circles to find the maglev motorcycle that my father left behind, said Liu Ling wrong. Guhan slapped Liu Ling's face without hesitation. He then pointed at the small circle of bricks not far away and said, The thickest one should be there. Why? The circle there is gone, and there's only a small circle of bricks left. The circle doesn't look that big, Liu Ling retorted. Idiot. These brick circles were buried 1,000 years ago. After 1,000 years of growth, the pine trees should have broken through all the bricks long ago. The complete circles of bricks you see are probably the fixed circles of those pine trees that were broken by Yuenko during the Great Calamity. Only that circle of bricks has bricks scattered the furthest, because the pine trees that supported them were the thickest. After saying that, Guhan did not explain further. He picked up his Chinpin sword and dug the ground. A few minutes later, a maglev motorcycle that was wrapped tightly in canvas finally appeared again. Chapter 865. Arc. With a scream, one of the Wu people was split in half and turned into a puddle of blood, disappearing into the ground. This was the number of Wu people that Han Yu had killed, but the Wu people were still attacking her like crazy. It was as if they didn't know fatigue. Although the other sword ladies around them were fighting bravely, they were no match for the sorcerer tribe, who used the tactic of biting an elephant to death with their numbers. Moreover, there was an intense battle in the sky. 3 great sorcerers from the sorcerer tribe were attacking a beautiful sword lady with a pair of black, bat-like wings, and a sword lady with a white feather robe and 7 white balls of light floating behind her. These 3 great shamans were all great shamans like Kwafu. To be able to fight against 3 great shamans at the same time and not lose, one could imagine how powerful the 2 sword ladies were. Madam Lilith, Madam Yao, you must hold on. Looking at the battle in the sky that was still in a stalemate, Hong Yu clenched her fist and prayed. The 2 sword ladies fighting in the sky were the Sun Star Guardian Lilith and the Moon Star Guardian Yao Wang's sword ladies, the Blood Demon sword and the Big Dipper sword. Only these 2 sword ladies, who were the strongest in the Mountain Sea Pass, could stop 3 great shamans at the same time. However, it could be seen that the battle between the 2 sword maidens had entered a very painful and anxious stage. Their personal shields were already covered in all kinds of cracks, which meant that the energy of their personal shields was already less than 20%. This meant that their personal shields could break at any time. If the battle in the sky was full of danger, then the battle on the ground was in a desperate situation. In ancient times, the Suzaku Imperial Star had 3 main star regions, but now, only the Zhen Waterworms region remained. This region was directly guarded by Hongyu, and it was the last breath of the Suzaku Imperial Star. Once this region was lost, the entire Suzaku Imperial Star would be destroyed, and the entire Cycle Heaven Star formation would be destroyed as well. This area was very important, but there were less than 300 sword ladies still fighting there. It has to be said that 30 minutes ago, there were 700 sword ladies here. In just 30 minutes, more than 400 sword ladies had died. According to this speed, the remaining 300 sword ladies could probably hold on for another 20 minutes or so. Of course, this was a theoretical calculation, but in reality, Hongyu knew very well that the Zhen Waterworm could probably hold on for less than 5 minutes. Previously, 700 sword maidens had to face the encirclement of more than 5,000 shamans, which meant that one sword maiden had to face the encirclement of 7 shamans. But now, less than 300 sword maidens had to face the encirclement of more than 4,000 shamans, which meant that one sword maiden had to face the encirclement of 12 shamans. Moreover, the energy of the previous 700 sword ladies' personal shields was more than 50%, but now, the average energy of their personal shields was less than 10%. Right beside Hongyu, a sword maiden who was in the middle of a battle was struck by 2 sorcerer tribe members at the same time, and the protective shield on the surface of her body instantly shattered. Li Wen, hurry up and take back your sword lady. Seeing the sword lady's personal shield shatter, Hongyu immediately spoke through her personal terminal to a flustered young swordsman in the command post about a kilometer behind her. The man called Li Wen miserably said to Hongyu through his personal terminal, "Vermilion Bird can't come back. My orders are useless. Bailey Jian can't come back." Hongyu turned her head and saw something like a sapling growing on Bailey Jian's neck. She sighed inwardly, knowing that Bailey Jian was done for. He wasn't coming back. The sapling was an ability unique to the Gomong tribe's magi. They could split off a part of their body, and like dandelions drifting in the wind, they flew towards the sword ladies in a dense swarm. As long as one of these seeds landed on a sword lady's body, it would immediately germinate on the surface of the sword lady's body, like a small mole growing on her body. However, such a seed couldn't cause any actual damage. At most, it would make the sword lady feel very itchy, just like being bitten by a mosquito. However, such a seed growing on the sword lady's body meant that the sword lady's body was constantly in contact with the Wu people. The condition for the swordsman to make the sword lady return to his sword was that the sword lady had to completely break away from Yuan Ko. No part of her body or her sword could come into contact with Yuan Ko. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to return to her sword. This directly led to Bailey Jian's tragedy. Because of the seed growing on his skin, no matter how the swordsman in the command post tried to summon his sword lady back to his sword, Bailey Jian couldn't turn into a ray of light and return. Her personal shield had already shattered, so she could only use her body to withstand the Wu people's attacks. In just over 10 seconds, more than 10 Wu people's attacks hit Bailey Jian's body. Bailey Jian spat out a mouthful of blood. His body went limp, and he fell to the ground. Hongyu wanted to rush to Bailey Jian's side to save him. But the 4 heaven wizards who were attacking Hongyu noticed Hongyu's intention. They immediately used their bodies to block in front of Hongyu at the risk of getting injured. Hongyu had no choice but to continue fighting with these heaven wizards. She could only watch as the Wu people vented their anger on Bailey Jian, who had fallen to the ground. It was like a slaughterhouse. Bailey Jian's swordsman, Li Wen, screamed from his gadget. Then, Li Wen's voice could no longer be heard. At the same time, the Wu people who were attacking Bailey Jian scattered like a peacock spreading its tail. They looked for new targets and joined in the attack on the other sword ladies. There were only 4 or 5 pieces of the famed sword left on the ground. That was Bailey Jian. Bailey Jian had been broken. As the wielder of Bailey Jian, the sword mark in Li Wen's mind palace must have been seriously injured. That was why he had fainted after letting out a scream. If this 100-mile sword couldn't be repaired, then Li Wen would never be able to obtain another famed sword greatsword mistress. Li Wen was not alone. Within a minute, Hong Yu heard dozens of screams. This meant that dozens of swordsmen sword ladies had been broken. They had fainted just like Li Wen. Sigh. Hong Yu took one last look at her surroundings and gave a new order to her gadget. Sheep, arrange for all the swordsmen to retreat immediately. Sheep was Hong Yu's assistant. She was also the guardian of the main star ogre, Golden Goat. However, all of her sword ladies had been broken while she was guarding Golden Goat. She was now an ordinary person. Yes, Golden Goat immediately replied. However, he immediately realized that there was something wrong with Hong Yu's order. Boss, this should be to arrange for the fainted swordsmen to retreat, right? Golden Goat hurriedly asked. No, I meant for all the swordsmen to retreat. Hong Yu added. Then what about the sword ladies? What about the sword ladies who are still fighting? Golden Goat said in a panic. If the swordsman retreats too far, the man-made sword ladies will lose their command. There's no need to command them. Hong Yu killed a Wu people beside her. She said calmly with a hint of despair, we can't defend this place anymore. The Vermilion Bird Planet is bound to be breached. I can't let you risk staying in the battle zone. All of you retreat to the Sun Zone. As for these sword ladies, they have been infected with the seeds of the Gomong tribe. You can't let them return to the sword. Let them stay here temporarily. This is our fate. Understand? Golden Goat's tone was gloomy. He knew Hong Yu's personality very well. He knew that Hong Yu was not a person who would admit defeat. However, Hong Yu, who would never admit defeat, had admitted defeat at this moment. This meant that in Hong Yu's heart, the battle could no longer be salvaged. If one more person could live, that would count. When we retreat, we must ensure everyone's safety. If some people are unwilling to leave, you must take them away even if you knock them unconscious. We cannot retreat like before, leaving some people behind to die for nothing. Hong Yu added. Actually, the human swordsmen did not need to sacrifice so many people. This was because they were not the ones fighting directly, but the sword ladies. Therefore, these swordsmen hid in the command center a kilometer away from the front line. When the front line could not hold on any longer, the swordsmen would be arranged to retreat first. As long as they ran fast enough and weren't too unlucky, these swordsmen's lives would not be in too much danger. The ones who truly sacrificed were their sword ladies. However, some of the swordsmen had a deep relationship with their sword ladies. They could not accept using their sword ladies' lives to survive. Therefore, they chose to refuse to retreat. They stayed in the command center until their sword ladies broke and they fell unconscious. Then, they were torn to pieces by the charging Wu people. That was how most of the thousands of swordsmen who had sacrificed themselves had ended up. Humans did not encourage or oppose this kind of fearless behavior. After all, humans still had to consider the sword lady's standpoint. If all the swordsmen prioritized their own lives and abandoned the sword ladies on the battlefield, then the humans would definitely arouse the sword lady's resentment. It would not be good if there was a gap between humans and the sword ladies. Therefore, humans neither encouraged nor opposed this kind of behavior. Of course, there was a conspiracy theory. It was said that the higher-ups of the swordsmen thought that the swordsman who had lost his sword lady was useless. However, he still wanted to enjoy the various privileges of swordsmen. It was a waste of resources. It was better for them to die on the battlefield. No matter what the truth was, Hong Yu only had one thought, and that was to bring the remaining swordsmen to a safe place. A few minutes later, Boss, I've arranged for all the swordsmen to board the Star Shuttle. I've also saved a spot for you. Hurry up. Hong Yu did not wait for Gue Jinyong to finish and directly cut off her gadget. Other people could retreat, but she, Hong Yu, could not. Even if she had to die on the Vermilion Bird Imperial Star. Chapter 866. In the core of the Jun waterworm's territory, there was a fiery red throne that looked like a flying bird. This was the throne of the Vermilion Bird Imperial Star, the only symbol of the Vermilion Bird Imperial Star, and the core of the entire region. As long as this throne was destroyed, the suppression of the Vermilion Bird Imperial Star would come to an end, and the entire Jotian Star Grand Battle Formation would also come to an end. At this time, only Hong Yu was left on the battlefield. The other sword ladies had all fallen, and only Hong Yu was fighting as she retreated. When she reached the position of the throne, she had nowhere else to go. Ha ha! Come on, let's see how many Wu people I can kill in the end. Hong Yu's arm was covered in blood, because there was a huge cut on her shoulder. This meant that Hong Yu's personal shield had been broken, and now Hong Yu was fighting with her own body. This was extremely dangerous for the sword-bearer. If any of Hong Yu's vital parts were hit, then Hong Yu would instantly become a corpse. Blood Demon. I'll hold him off here. You go and help Hong Yu. In the sky, the Big Dipper sword, who was fighting with the three great sorcerers, suddenly said to the Blood Demon, "No!" The Blood Demon slashed a great sorcerer's attack. "If I leave, what will happen to this place? You won't last more than a few minutes." The Blood Demon shook his head. "I have to. If Hong Yu dies, the entire Vermilion Bird Imperial Star will be finished, and the Jotian Star Grand Battle Formation will also be finished, and the entire human race will be finished." The Big Dipper sword urged, "Go and help Hong Yu now. Leave this place to me. Hurry up and go." The Blood Demon gritted his teeth, then took a blow from two great sorcerers and rushed out of the encirclement. "Then you must hold on. I'm going to help Hong Yu." With that, the Blood Demon flew towards Hong Yu. "I'll go after her." Xiang Lu, the great magus of the Candle Dragon tribe who was attacking the Big Dipper sword, immediately wanted to leave the formation and chase after the Blood Devil sword. "Don't mind her. She's digging her own grave." However, the Xinming tribe's great witch, Jiufeng, stopped Xiang Lu. Then, Xiang Lu heard Jiufeng say, "It will be troublesome for the three of us to deal with the two sword ladies together. Now that there's only one left, we only need a few minutes to break this sword maiden. At that time, we'll attack the one below together, and the outcome will be decided." "That's right. Jiufeng has a point. Let's deal with this sword maiden first." The last Tianwu tribe's great witch, Fengbo, also agreed. Xiang Lu had nothing else to say, so he gave up on chasing after the Blood Demon sword and focused on attacking the remaining Big Dipper sword with Jiufeng and Fengbo. In an instant, the pressure that the Big Dipper sword faced increased by a few times. Without the Blood Demon sword's cooperation and protection, the Big Dipper sword's shield was quickly worn down by the three Zuwus. In just a few minutes, the Big Dipper sword's energy had dropped by about 10%. At this time, the Big Dipper sword's remaining energy shield was less than 5%. Perhaps in a minute or two, the Big Dipper sword would follow the footsteps of the other sword ladies and be broken in the hands of these Wu people. Jotian Star Battle Formation. Can't we defend it anymore? Looking at the energy bar of the Big Dipper sword shield that was only left with a little bit of HP, the Big Dipper sword let out a long sigh. She had already received an order from her sword wielder, Yao Wang, to use her ultimate move to break the encirclement of these great witches and instantly return to Yao Wang's hand through the sword. However, this was equivalent to humans completely giving up on the Big Dipper sword. Only God knew what kind of suffering the entire world would suffer. Come on. Just as the Big Dipper sword was about to prepare her ultimate move, suddenly, she seemed to hear the roar of a maglev motorcycle, and the source of the sound came from the direction of the Wu people. "What's that sound? Why is it coming from our direction?" Xiang Lu also noticed the sound and asked Jiufeng, who was beside him, a little puzzled. "I think I've heard this sound before. It's very familiar. I've definitely heard it before." After all, Jiufeng was the most knowledgeable one. After all, she was the one who had lived the longest among all the great witches. In Jiufeng's vague memory, the sound left a deep impression on her. Humans? There are two humans on maglev motorcycles attacking our position. Most of the Wu people on the battlefield belong to the Wu people of the Tianwu tribe. Therefore, as the great witch of the Tianwu tribe, Fengbo was the first to receive information about maglev motorcycles from his master. Maglev motorcycles? A thought flashed in Jiufeng's mind. I remember now. The bloodline from 45 years ago. Whenever he appears, he will always be accompanied by this sound. The bloodline from 45 years ago that Jiufeng was referring to was Liu Yanling's father, Liu Yanling. As a heavy maglev motorcycle enthusiast, Liu Yanling's favorite thing to do when she was living in Shanhai Pass was to hunt down the Wu people on maglev motorcycles. Therefore, every Wu people who had survived that era would remember this sound deeply. This is bad. Quafu has sent a message to us from his tribe. He said that the new descendant of the bloodline has entered Shanhai Pass. She worked with another sword-bearer and the people of Glory City to defeat him. He wants us to be careful of the descendant of the bloodline. We must not let her get close to the battlefield of planet Suzaku, and we must not let her hold the flag-planting ceremony. Otherwise, with the power of the bloodline, this battle will be for naught. Jiufeng said in a panic. Then let the children surround them. Fengbo also realized the seriousness of the matter. Immediately order your men to transfer everyone that can be transferred over. Even if you have to use your own body, you must block the descendant of the bloodline. We must not let her enter the humans' territory. With Fengbo's order, more than half of the Wu people on the battlefield began to retreat in a frenzy, rushing in the direction of the motorcycles. This made Hong Yu and Blood Demon's sword, who were in the midst of a bitter battle, feel a lot less pressure. They were no longer in a precarious situation like before. If the Wu people's attacks were maintained at this low intensity, Hong Yu and Blood Demon's sword felt that they could hold on for another hour without a problem. What's going on? Why do I feel like I heard the sound of maglev motorcycles? Blood Demon's sword killed 3 intermediate sorcerers in one slash, but still found time to chat with Hong Yu. Anyway, it's impossible for the Wu people to ride maglev motorcycles. The only ones who can ride maglev motorcycles are us humans. Hong Yu answered Blood Demon's sword after piercing the heart of a Wu people. That means our reinforcements have arrived. Blood Demon's sword's morale was boosted when she heard this. Reinforcements did not need too many. As long as another 20 or so famed swordsmen arrived, coupled with her and the Big Dipper sword, they were confident that they could continue this battle until the sun and moon took over Shanhai Pass. Let's hope so. Hong Yu's words were filled with anticipation. Gahan, there are more and more Wu people coming to intercept us. Liu Yanling, who was driving the maglev motorcycles, said to Gahan in a serious tone. Under Fengbo's order, a large number of Wu people surged to their side like a tidal wave. These Wu people try to stop the maglev motorcycles with their own bodies. As soon as the maglev motorcycles stopped, Gohan and Liu Yanling would lose the ability to rush out of the Wu people's encirclement. They could only kill their way forward step by step. This was no different from suicide. It's fine. Just charge forward. Leave the rest to me. Gohan unsheathed his Qing Pin sword and tapped the maglev motorcycles lightly with the tip of his toes. He leaped in front of Liu Yanling and stood on the protective railing at the front of the maglev motorcycles. Gohan grabbed the handlebars of the maglev motorcycles with one hand and the Qing Pin sword with the other. He became a bayonet on the maglev motorcycles, brutally killing all the Wu people in front of him. Needless to say, when the sharpness of the Qing Pin sword and the powerful impact of the maglev motorcycles, Gohan became an invincible knife. Any Wu people who dared to approach the maglev motorcycles were cut in half by Gohan's sword. Even a heaven wizard, who was second only to a great wizard, could kill one with a single sword strike from Gohan's Qingpin sword. On top of that, Gohan's swordsmanship was exquisite, and he had quick reflexes. Even if 7 or 8 members of the sorcerer tribe pounced on him at the same time, Gohan could still cut them into 2 with just one slash. It was as if he was playing a mobile game called Fruit Ninja from before the apocalypse. With one slash, the members of the sorcerer tribe were like fruits. Therefore, these fearless Wu people who charged forward were destined to be in vain. Their sacrifice had no effect. They were merely nourishment for Qing Pin's sword. Every time Qing Pin's sword killed a Wu people, the green light on the sword blade would become slightly thicker, as if it had absorbed something from the Wu people. Oh no, my children can't stop these two humans. Feng Buo's face was stiff, as if his mother had died. Most of the people on the ground were the Wu people of Feng Buo's tribe. If they could stop that bloodline, Feng Buo wouldn't be too sad if his own tribe's Wu people died. However, the problem was that the deaths of his own tribe members were useless. The maglev motorcycles didn't slow down at all. Instead, they seemed to have sped up quite a bit. In another 2 or 3 minutes, they would reach planet Shizuku. By then, everything would be too late. I'll stop that maglev motorcycles. I'll leave the sword Maiden to you. With that, Feng Buo rushed down from the sky toward the motorcycles that were heading straight for planet Shizuku. Looking down from the sky, all the Wu people looked like countless ants gathered together. It was like a dark sea. The maglev motorcycle was like the fin of a shark in the sea. Wherever the fin passed, even the densest sea would be easily split open. It would kill anything that stood in its way. Chapter 867. Feng Buo, in his normal form, had a face that was curved like a crescent moon. Half of his nose was sunken into his face, his earlobes were as big as cattail leaf fans, and he had 2 horns on his head. Although he looked very strange and terrifying, he still maintained a human appearance. Feng Buo's weapon was a golden windbag made of an unknown material. It was said that the sack contained the Samadhi divine wind, one of the most powerful things in the world, just like the Samadhi true fire. When Sun Wukong passed by Divine Wind Ridge, he was blinded by the Samadhi divine wind. If he hadn't called for reinforcements, Tripitaka would have been eaten alive. Therefore, as soon as Feng Buo appeared, he opened his wind belt without saying a word. A large phoenix comparable to a level 10 storm instantly surged out of the wind pocket and blew directly at the maglev motorcycle that was moving forward at high speed. Under a level 10 storm, even a moving heavy truck could be blown away, let alone a maglev motorcycle. Therefore, the high-speed maglev motorcycle immediately began to sway. Although Liu Ling tried her best to maintain the stability of the maglev motorcycle, its speed inevitably decreased. More importantly, the Samadhi divine wind had no effect on the Wu people of the Gomong tribe. After all, Feng Buo was a great wizard of the Gomong tribe. Therefore, soon, more and more Wu people blocked in front of Gahan. It seemed that the maglev motorcycle was about to stop. The most dangerous thing was Liu Ling and Gohan's eyes. The moment the wind touched Gohan's eyes, Gohan felt a burning pain in his eyes, as if countless needles were pricking his eyes, or as if all the oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea had been poured into his eyes. Back then, even the Sun Wukong, the universe rank Yuan Ko, had been tormented by the Samadhi divine wind, let alone a mere famed sword-rank swordsman like Gahan. Close your eyes. In a situation where we don't have a personal protective shield, as long as we come into contact with a little bit of the Samadhi divine wind, we'll be blinded. Liu Ling also felt a burning pain in her eyes, but probably because Gohan was in front of her, Liu Ling was not in extreme pain like Gahan. She could barely open her eyes and see the situation around her. No, you still want to drive a maglev motorcycle? You must not close your eyes. Otherwise, the Zhou star battle formation will be finished. At this point, Gohan suddenly leaned his body back, tightly blocking Liu Ling. In this way, the Samadhi divine wind was unable to blow directly into Liu Ling's eyes. Liu Ling immediately felt that her eyes were much more comfortable. She could barely judge her surroundings and paths through the corner of her eyes. However, in this way, Gahan was bound to face the attack of the Samadhi divine wind. Drops of golden blood tears began to flow from his eyes. No, your eyes will be finished. Liu Ling shook her head and said, "What are you afraid of? As long as we can successfully break through, we can just dig out these eyes and grow a new pair of eyes." Gohan's voice was full of determination and undeniability. "Ling, the only thing you have to do now is to move forward. break through these damn Wu people, and rush into the Imperial Star of Suzaku. Liuyan Ling did not speak, but she expressed her intention with practical actions. She suddenly picked up her 3-foot sword and stabbed it directly into the control box under the handlebar of the maglev motorcycle. The lid of the control box was directly cut off. Did you know, Gahan? Dad once told me that this is actually just a small part of the maglev motorcycle speed. Most maglev motorcycles have never shown their true speed in their lives. That's because this exists in their bodies. At this point, Liuyan Ling directly pulled something out of the control box. A square metal object the size of a cigarette case was pulled out by Liuyan Ling. What did you pull out? Although he could not see, Gahan could sense Liuyan Ling's movements. Something called a stabilizer. Liuyan Ling did not hesitate to throw the small box out. Hold on tight. It's time for you to experience the real speed of an old driver. As soon as Liuyan Ling's voice fell, Gahan suddenly felt a huge push from behind him. Then, the entire maglev motorcycle accelerated at 3 times its previous speed. The surrounding Wu people did not even have time to react before they were directly left behind by the maglev motorcycle. Gahan remembered. The stabilizer was a device used to stabilize the balance of the maglev motorcycle. Any maglev vehicle would sway in air due to the difficulty in balancing the airflow. A moment of carelessness would cause the motorcycle to crash. Therefore, manufacturers invented the stabilizer, which could use computer intelligence to stabilize the balance of the maglev vehicle. However, this would also limit the speed of the maglev motorcycle to about 1/3 of its original speed. By removing the stabilizer, Liuyan Ling could achieve 3 times the speed of the previous one. But at the same time, the maglev motorcycle Liuyan Ling was driving was in an extremely unstable state. Coupled with the damned level 10 storm, a slight mistake could lead to a tragic crash in 0.01 seconds. Look, Ling is also gambling with her life. Gahan could not help but sigh. In order to make Liuyan Ling maintain the stability of the maglev motorcycle as much as possible, Gahan could only keep his body motionless so as not to add to Liuyan Ling's troubles. Gahan did not want to add to Liuyan Ling's troubles, but Feng Bo could not wait any longer. When he found that even the Samadhi Divine Wind could not stop the maglev motorcycle, Feng Bo had no choice but to take action himself. In the blink of an eye, Feng Bo appeared in front of the maglev motorcycle. Although Gahan was blind, based on the different changes in the air, he instantly realized that there should be a strong opponent in front of him. I must not let this opponent touch Ling. Otherwise, all he needs to do is push hard, and this maglev motorcycle will be finished. Gahan thought to himself. In fact, Feng Bo had the same plan. With his strength of a senior wizard, he could easily push down a reinforced concrete building, let alone an unstable maglev motorcycle. Just as the maglev motorcycle was getting closer and closer to Feng Bo raised his hand and prepared to push hard. Gahan, who was standing in front of the maglev motorcycle, suddenly leaped forward and threw himself on Feng Bo. Feng Bo was stunned by Gahan's action. By the time he came to his senses, Liuyan Ling's maglev motorcycle had already sped away. Feng Bo had missed the best timing. Gahan? What's wrong, Gahan? Liuyan Ling, who was originally shielded by Gahan, suddenly felt an empty space in front of her. The scorching hot Samadhi wine blew into Liuyan Ling's eyes, and Liuyan Ling understood that Gahan, who had been blocking her way, had disappeared. Liuyan Ling could only shout Gahan's name in panic. Ling, the Vermilion Bird area is right in front of you. You must rush through. Gahan's faint voice seemed to come from behind her. Liuyan Ling had already understood that Gahan had sacrificed himself, and a great sense of grief welled up in her heart. The maglev motorcycle under her seemed to be affected by Liuyan Ling's grief. The motorcycle, which was already 3 times faster than before, seemed to have sped up in an instant. They're here. Reinforcements are here. The sharp-eyed Blood Devil was the first to notice the maglev motorcycle speeding towards them, and he immediately shouted in joy. No, why is there only one person? Hong Yu, who had been full of hope, instantly despaired. She realized that the reinforcements who were speeding over on the motorcycle were actually only one person. One person is still a person. Just based on the fact that she was able to rush here alone, I'm afraid she's not any weaker than you or me. She should be able to last at least 10 more minutes. Blood Devil was very optimistic. At a time like this, an additional person's strength was also an additional strength. There was nothing to be picky about. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Look up in the sky. Following Hong Yu's words, Blood Devil looked up and saw Jiufeng, one of the great witches who had been attacking the Big Dipper's sword, also rushing down from the sky. Her target was the lone reinforcement. She's finished. Hong Yu could already clearly see Liu Nianling's gender. She then said coldly and despairingly, Jiufeng is a great witch whose speed is second only to Yinglong. No matter how fast that maglev motorcycle is, it can't be faster than Jiufeng. She can't make it here. Oof. Who said she can't make it here? Blood Devil, who was beside Hong Yu, suddenly smiled. Hong Yu, I'll leave this place to you for now. You should be able to handle it. Before Hong, you could understand what the Blood Demon Sword meant. The Blood Demon Sword transformed into a huge bat and rushed out. Hong Yu said that Jiufeng was a great witch whose speed was second only to Yinglong, but Blood Devil, who had transformed into a Blood Devil bat, was also one of the best in the field of speed. If Jiufeng was a guided missile, then Blood Devil bat was an anti-missile. Just as Jiufeng was about to grab Liu Nianling, Blood Devil bat crashed into Jiufeng's body. Then, like a billiard ball, Jiufeng was sent flying in another direction. Blood Devil bat grabbed Liu Nianling and held her in its arms. After a few seconds, it returned to Hong Yu's side. This meant that Liu Nianling had finally achieved her goal. She had successfully reached the Vermilion Bird District and entered the human-controlled area. Why did you save her? She didn't even have a flag-planting ceremony, and her eyes were blinded by the Samadhi heavenly wind. She's just a burden. Hong Yu knew that Liu Nianling's body was still that of an ordinary human being the first time she saw Liu Nianling. She didn't have a flag-planting ceremony at all. Yes, Blood Devil touched the back of his head in embarrassment. But all the Zhou Tian star banners have been moved to the sun. Even if we wanted to hold a flag-planting ceremony for her now, it's too late. No, and a big Zhou Tian star banner. Lying on the ground, Liu Nianling stood up shakily with tears of blood flowing out of her eyes. The moment she saw Liu Nianling's face clearly, Hong Yu's heart suddenly surged with a great deal of fear. Her eyes had clearly been blinded by the Samadhi heavenly wind. Bright red tears of blood had clearly covered this woman's delicate face. Her eyes were clearly giving her unimaginable pain. Anyone would have subconsciously closed their eyes at this time to reduce this shocking pain. However, Liu Nianling's eyes were wide open. Her pitch-black eye sockets seemed to want to suck in the entire world. This was a terrifying person. This was the conclusion that appeared in Hong Yu's heart. Give me your big Zhou Tian star banner. This blind woman suddenly grabbed Hong Yu's shoulder and said to Hong Yu in a voice that seemed to have come from hell. After the big Zhou Tian star banner was inserted into a person's body, there were two ways to leave. The first way was for the wielder to die and the big Zhou Tian star banner to leave on its own. The second way was for the wielder to pull out their big Zhou Tian star banner and hand it over to the new wielder. Liu Nianling's meaning was very clear. She wanted Hong Yu to pull out her big Zhou Tian star banner and then hand it over to Liu Nianling so that Liu Nianling could inherit the power of the Zhou Tian star banner. No, what kind of joke is this? This is the Vermilion Bird Imperial Star's great heavenly star banner. If I give it to you, then Hong Yu frantically refused. Give it to me now. Liu Nianling threw herself forward and put her neck on Hong Yu's shoulder. Her mouth was full of blood as she whispered into Hong Yu's ear, "You must give it to me, my dear Hong Yu, Sword Maiden." Chapter 868. Who are you? Hong Yu's face paled, as if she had seen a ghost. Liu Nianling. Liu Nianling's answer was straightforward. When Hong Yu heard the name Liu Nian, she came to a sudden realization. So he's from the Leonian clan. No wonder he knows my deepest secret. Since the Leonian clan wants it, how can I, Hong Yu, not give it to them? Besides, I'm afraid that only the Leonian clan can save the Zhou Tian Star Battle Formation. Hong Yu smiled bitterly, then said to Blood Demon's sword, "Sorry to trouble you. I'll have to rely on you for a minute during the flag planting ceremony." "It's only a minute, no problem." Blood Demon Sword laughed heartily, then said to Liunian Ling, "So it's time for the descendant of the Liunian clan to come out again. Speaking of which, I met a brat from the Liunian clan in my previous life. He was hot-tempered and lecherous. That brat actually dared to touch my butt, and I sent him flying with a kick. By the way, that fellow's name is Fleeting Wooden Fish. Who is he to you?" "That's my grandfather." Liunian Ling had an awkward look on her face. In Liunian Ling's mind, her grandfather was probably the most old-fashioned and serious person in the world. Who would have thought that he would secretly touch a sword maiden's, but when he was young? This was simply unbelievable. "Hurry up. I don't have much energy left in my personal shield." With that, hundreds of bats flew out of Blood Demon Sword's body, and these bats flew towards the surging Wu people, forming a wall that temporarily blocked the Wu people. Whoosh! Hong Yu took a deep breath, then closed her eyes. At the same time, something seemed to grow out of Hong Yu's head. Like a flag-raising ceremony, a crimson flag grew out of Hong Yu's head, fluttering in the wind. The flag wasn't big. It looked about the size of a fluttering red scarf. The picture was also very simple. The 48 stars formed the shape of a giant bird that was about to take flight. This giant bird was naturally the vermilion bird. Hong Yu's two hands held the pole of the Zhou Tian Star's Hour banner at the same time. Then, she forcefully pulled the Zhou Tian Star's Hour banner out of Hong Yu's body and handed it directly to Liunian Ling. "Originally, we should have made a new great Zhou Tian Star Time banner. We shouldn't have let the descendant of the Liunian family use the great Zhou Tian Star Time banner that someone else used. But I don't have a choice right now. Please use my great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner." Although she had already pulled out the Zhou Tian Stars Time banner, Hong Yu did not forget to mock the young miss of the Liunian family. "Thank you." Liunian Ling could understand the dissatisfaction in Hong Yu's heart, so Liunian Ling chose to smile at Hong Yu. Then, she took the great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner from Hong Yu's hand. Without any hesitation, she inserted the great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner into her Baihui acupoint. The great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner instantly disappeared into Liunian Ling's body, and Liunian Ling entered a state of sluggishness. This was a necessary step in the flag-planting ceremony. The great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner and the wielder's purple palace needed a certain amount of time to fuse. Of course, this time was not long, usually only tens of seconds. That was why Hong Yu had the Blood Demon Sword help her for a minute. The moment the great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner entered Liunian Ling's body, she instantly regained her senses of the sword essence. The sword essence in her body was then transformed into a light-like energy through the great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner. Liunian Ling knew that this energy was the power of the stars, a power that could only be found in the Zhou Tian Stars battle formation. "Blood Demon, I'm going to kill you." On the other side, the Grand Magus Jiufeng, who was sent flying by the Blood Demon, charged towards Liunian Ling. Jiufeng could be considered as the most beautiful woman among the Grand Magi. Her appearance and temperament were like that of a phoenix, noble and indescribable. However, Jiufeng had completely lost her noble temperament. All that was left was rage and violence. Her originally beautiful pair of white hands had already turned into two sharp claws, and a layer of sparkling and translucent ice automatically formed on the claws. The Xianming tribe possessed the power to control ice, so their attacks were naturally ice-based. A pair of wings made of ice crystals suddenly appeared on Jiufeng's back. Then, this pair of wings flapped and instantly turned into countless sharp icicles that pierced towards the Blood Demon. These icicles were extremely fast, almost like bullets from a machine gun. Although it was possible for the Blood Demon Sword to avoid them, the person behind the Blood Demon Sword would be in danger if the Blood Demon Sword avoided them. Han Yu had already lost her great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner, which was equivalent to losing control of the sword essence. Thus, she had become an ordinary person again. Meanwhile, Liu Yinling was in the midst of fusing with the great Zhou Tian Stars Time banner and simply couldn't move. If the blood demon's sword dodged the icicles, the two of them would probably be pierced into a pile of ice shards. The blood demon's sword had no choice but to spit out a mouthful of fresh blood. Then, this fresh blood instantly condensed into a wall of blood in the air that blocked Jiufeng's icicles. The two forces, one offensive and one defensive, collided. How could the blood demon's sword, who was already seriously injured, withstand such a collision? The wall of blood that condensed finally broke after blocking for a while. The remaining icicles all smashed onto the blood demon sword's body, and the blood demon sword's protective shield also shattered after the wall of blood. As a result, the last of the icicles smashed into blood demon sword's body. Blood demon's sword fell to the ground, her body covered in blood. "I'm sorry. I try my best." The blood demon sword looked up at Liu Yinling and smiled bitterly. "Thank you." Liu Yinling, who was originally in a daze, recovered the moment the blood demon sword fell. Although Liu Yinling didn't look any different on the outside, in the blood demon sword's eyes, it was as if a little kitten had turned into a golden sword lion in an instant. "Blood demon sword, I'll send you on your way now," Jiufeng shouted with a sharp voice. Countless icicles once again shot out from Jiufeng's wings, shooting towards the motionless blood demon's sword on the ground. If the blood demon sword didn't dodge this attack, it would basically be useless. Even if it didn't break, it would enter the 1% durability stage. Blacksmiths would need to spend a lot of materials to repair it. However, something that terrified Jiufeng happened. When her icicles were about to get close to the blood demon sword's body, 3 sword lights suddenly shot out from the woman behind the blood demon sword. The 3 sword lights swept gently, and her icicles were instantly shattered into ice shards that scattered on the ground. What was more terrifying was that the sword lights in the woman's body seemed endless. Thousands of sword lights flew out from the woman's body every second, and all of them floated around the woman. When Wu people, who were surrounding the woman, saw this, they immediately rushed forward fearlessly, wanting to kill the woman. However, before their bodies could touch the woman, the dozen or so sword lights floating around them automatically killed them as if they had eyes. Wu people didn't care about these sword lights at all. They had fought with human swordsmen for a long time, so they knew that human swordsmen's attacks tended to be stronger the more concentrated they were. Splitting thousands of sword lights like this was purely courting death. At most, it was just nice to look at, but it was not practical at all. They didn't even know if these thousands of sword lights could cut their hair. Therefore, the Wu people chose to ignore the sword lights and forcibly charged over with their bodies. Afterward, the Wu people regretted it, but it was too late. Faced with the Wu people who charged over, some sword lights immediately took the initiative to attack them. Then, the moment they came into contact with their bodies, they completely ignored their physical defenses and pierced into the Wu people's bodies. The Wu people, who were pierced by the sword lights, stopped running on the spot. Their eye sockets bulged, and their eyeballs even popped out. Their entire bodies also swelled up. In just a few seconds, they exploded like an inflated balloon. Blue blood splattered all over the surrounding land, and finally returned to Zhu Wu's essence and blood. Within 5 seconds, over 100 Wu people, all of them were dead. However, what was even more terrifying was that more sword lights surged out of the woman's body. They did not stop for an entire minute. In the end, more than 60,000 sword lights floated in the air, filling up the space of a school building. In the middle of these sword lights was Liu Yinling, who had a hideous smile on her face. Oh no, this is the billion sword skill. At the end of the day, Jiufeng was very knowledgeable. She immediately recognized the technique the woman used. Naturally, she also guessed the woman's identity. She was the descendant of the Fleeting Time family, Fleeting Time Lin. Retreat. This was an instinctive reaction from Jiufeng. She was one of the few great magi who had lived through the era of Lu Nianzhong. She knew how terrifying the man named Lu Nianzhong was. She also knew how pitiful the Wu people were during that time. At that time, all the Wu people did not have a home and could only run around the world. This was because once they settled down in their tribe, they would be discovered by Lu Nianzhong, who loved to race around on his motorbike, and all of them would be killed by the sword lights of the billion sword skill. That was the most tragic period of the Wu people's life. Every few decades, they would have to go through a period of 3 years. Now that the most tragic period of 3 years was about to come, Jiufeng should have run away immediately. However, Jiufeng was extremely unwilling. This was the moment that the Wu people were closest to success in hundreds of years. As long as they mustered up enough strength to push forward and destroy the throne of the Imperial Star, the dream of the Wu people for hundreds of years would come true. As long as Zhu Wu could wake up, the freedom that they had lost for hundreds of years would be at their fingertips. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. The nine-headed phoenix suddenly let out a violent roar, and an ice phoenix with 9 feathered tails appeared in the sky in an instant. This was Jiufeng's essence true body. It seemed like Jiufeng wanted to make a final stand. Even if she had to sacrifice her essence true body, she wanted to destroy the Zhou Tian star battle formation that had imprisoned the Wu people for hundreds of years. You're overestimating yourself. Facing Jiufeng's essence true body, Liu Ling revealed a disdainful smile. With a light point of her finger, the tens of thousands of sword lights around her instantly gathered to form a giant sword of light. With a speed that Jiufeng could not even see, it pierced into Jiufeng's body. 1 second later, the 9-feathered ice crystal phoenix exploded like an exploding ice sculpture. The sky was filled with specks of blue light, and it looked extremely beautiful. Chapter 869. Run. Xiang Lu heard Jiufeng's voice, and then the voice faded away. At the same time, Xiang Lu sensed that Jiufeng's aura had completely disappeared, which meant that Jiufeng had died. This was 9 Phoenix's final warning to the other Magi. He told all the Magi to flee as fast as they could. They had to flee as far as they could. The sorcerer tribe knew very well why 9-headed Phoenix had said that. At least, the remaining 2 great sorcerers knew very well. They had seen the sword light that killed Jiufeng in a second. The name Myriad Sword Skill, which had been deeply imprinted in the minds of all the Wu people, also reappeared in their minds. However, just like Jiufeng, although her reason told her that she should run away, when she was so close to victory, it also required courage and wisdom to run away. Unfortunately, Xiang Lu and Feng Bo did not have such courage and wisdom. Just like Jiufeng, they still wanted to fight with their lives in the face of an easy victory. Everyone rush together. Use your most powerful strength to rush forward. As long as you can smash the Suzaka throne, we will be free forever. The voices of Xiang Lu and Feng Bo rang in the ears of the remaining Wu people on the battlefield. There were still about 4,000 sorcerer tribesmen left on the battlefield. When they heard Xiang Lu and Count of Wind's voices, they became agitated. They howled at the sky like wild wolves and rushed towards the vermilion bird throne in unison. All of you go to hell, Liu Ling sneered. With a thought, the tens of thousands of sword lights around her all began to move. These sword lights formed groups of a dozen or dozens of sword lights. A dozen of sword lights formed a group to deal with Yuan Ko, who was at the intermediate sorcerer level, and hundreds of sword lights formed a group to deal with the Wu people, who were at the heaven sorcerer level. The attacks of these sword lights were orderly and not chaotic. As long as they pierced into Wu people's body, they would be killed in one blow. Not long after, all the sorcerer tribe members who had been laughing at the sky exploded. They were killed by the billion sword skill. Not a single one of them survived. It was as if the sorcerer tribe members had never existed. Not good. We can't do it. Let's go. At this time, only 2 senior magi, Xiang Lu and Feng Bo, were left among the Wu people. Seeing that the Wu people they had instigated disappeared in an instant, No matter how stupid these two senior magi were, they knew that it was impossible. It was no longer a question of whether or not they could win, but whether or not they could escape from Ling fleeting time. Transform into the origin true body. Then, run in different directions. In an instant, Feng Bo made a decision. In an instant, he transformed into a deer-like body, covered with leopard-like patterns. His head was like a peacock's, and he had weird horns and a snake-like tail. Xiang Lu, on the other hand, turned into a giant snake with 9 heads. But different from Yuan bandits Yamada no Orochi, the 8 heads of Yamada no Orochi were all the same. But Xiang Lu's 9 heads were rat head, cat head, dog head, ox head, tiger head, sheep head, monkey head, chicken head, and horse head. According to the legend before the Great Calamity, after the ancestor of the human race, the Yellow Emperor Xin Yuan, killed Xiang Lu, the 9 heads of Xiang Lu fell to the ground and turned into mice, cats, dogs, and other 9 different animals. Xiang Lu was actually the ancestor of these 9 animals. Of course, after the Great Calamity, this legend was proved to be unscientific. There were many monsters in the heavenly court who were based on these animals, and many of them were said to be much older than Xiang Lu. If Xiang Lu was the ancestor of these animals, then what about these monsters? The simplest example was the Green Bull in the Tushita Palace in the heaven. He was a Yuan bandit on a universe level. It was said that he was a monster that appeared at the beginning of the chaos. He was at least dozens of times older than Xiang Lu, who was a member of the Wu tribe. Was he a descendant of Xiang Lu? Let's not talk about the legends of the Wu people for the time being. Perhaps only they knew what had happened back then. Anyway, when facing Liu Ling's 100 million sword skill, the 2 famous great sorcerers began to run away. Can you run away? A sharp glint flashed in fleeting time Ling's eyes, and his cheeks flushed red. He tapped his hands on the sword around him at the same time, and the remaining swords around him split into 2 groups. However, one of the groups was brighter, while Li Bo's swords were brighter. Finally, they gathered together, forming 2 gigantic sword flashes. They were identical to the sword flashes that had slain 9 Phoenix. Go! Liu Ling said, and 2 sword lights darted out. Their speed was twice faster than Xiang Lu and Feng was, and they were about to catch up with the 2 great sorcerers. Stop it! In desperation, Feng Bo didn't even want his weapon. He puffed up the wind bag in his hand and opened it to the maximum, trying to stop Liu Ling's sword lights with the wind. On the other side, Xiang Lu also had his own plan. He took out 8 of his 9 heads and put them in the way of the sword lights. He wanted to use his heads to consume the power of the sword lights. Needless to say, the 2 great sorcerers' ideas were very interesting and creative. But as the saying goes, it was useless. Indeed, it was useless. Neither Feng Bo's wind bag nor Xiang Lu's 8 beasts and 8 heads could stop Liu Ling's sword lights. After a few seconds of stalemate, Feng Bo's wind bag was the first to break. Then, the sword light pierced through Feng Bo's body under his despairing eyes, turning him into specks of starlight. About 10 seconds later, Xiang Lu followed Feng Bo's footsteps. The 8 heads of the 8 beasts and 8 heads were also skewered by Liu Ling's sword lights. At last, Xiang Lu's snake meat was also skewered and returned to Zhu Wu's essence blood. Unfortunately, these great sorcerers and the Wu people would not really die. They only ran to Zhu Wu's essence blood to wait for resurrection. The only good news was that the Wu people were too injured this time. It was impossible to resurrect them in a year or 2 like before. The Wu people would have to rest for 5 or 6 years to recover their original fighting ability. All dead? The blood demon's sword seemed to be unable to accept the truth. The Wu people who had forced them into a desperate situation had all died in a short minute. Not a single one was left alive, including the great sorcerers. Is this the 100 million swords technique that the Lionian clan has suppressed the human race for 1,000 years? Han Yu was also dumbfounded as she muttered to herself. She had originally thought that she was amazing and was one of the best sword ladies. However, compared to Liu Ling, she was as laughable as an ant. The power of the Lionian clan has always been like this. Just get used to it. The Big Dipper sword floated down from the sky and landed beside the Blood Demon's sword and Hong Yu. It looked at the silent Lionian Ling with a complicated expression. However, Miss Ling, there seems to be something wrong with your 100 million swords technique. Why did you use 10,000 more sword lights to kill that Fumbua than Xianglu? Why is that? Because he deserves to die. Lionian Ling turned around and looked at the Big Dipper sword in confusion. You seem to understand my 100 million swords technique very well. You can actually tell that I used 10,000 more sword lights. I was once fortunate enough to become the sword lady of the Lionian clan, so I have some understanding of the 100 million swords technique of the Lionian clan. The Big Dipper's sword replied sadly. It seemed to think of the man called Lionian clan, and its eyes were filled with a gentle light. Unfortunately, the object of this light had already disappeared in the river of time, leaving only the Big Dipper's sword waiting here alone. Lionian clan, is he the 12th generation ancestor of our Lionian clan? As the direct descendant of the Lionian clan, Lionian Ling naturally remembered all the names of the ancestors of the Lionian clan. Lionian Ling immediately remembered that her 12th generation ancestor was indeed called Lionian Zhu. However, she did not remember whether his sword lady was the Big Dipper sword or not. After all, that was over 500 years ago. At that time, the Shanghai Pass did not exist. Junior Lionian Ling pays her respects to the Big Dipper sword lady, Blood Demon Lady. Although Lionian Ling's strength had far surpassed the Blood Demon sword and the Big Dipper sword, she still could not forget basic etiquette. When greeting an unfamiliar sword lady, even the descendant of the Lionian clan had to bow respectfully. Hee. No need, no need. The Blood Demon sword laughed heartily as he rubbed his head. The Big Dipper sword calmly accepted Lionian Ling's bow before looking at a certain spot on the battlefield in the distance. Is that swordsman who came to protect you your boyfriend? The Big Dipper sword suddenly asked. No. Lionian Ling hurriedly waved her hands. What kind of joke was this? She had already made up her mind over a week ago to not have anything to do with this bad guy anymore. Oh, then forget it. If he's dead, then he's dead. He's just a stinky man, the Big Dipper sword said indifferently. However, as soon as the Big Dipper sword finished speaking, Lionian Ling turned into a sword of light and rushed to where Gahan had died. Is this pure friendship? The Blood Demon's sword asked curiously as it moved to the Big Dipper sword. No. The Big Dipper sword shook its head. This is damned love. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.